Good day everyone, welcome to the AviationPro channel. Welcome to another VATSIM full flight video. In today's flight we're going to fly the Boeing 777 freighter all the way from Riga to Frankfurt on a very busy evening, Friday evening on the VATSIM network. Now during this flight I will try to explain as much as possible as we go, to cover as much as possible details about flying a typical 777 flight from A to B on the VATSIM network. Now tonight it's quite a busy night because we have two events going on. In Riga we have the Riga Friday Fun event, and in Frankfurt we have the Frankfurt Friday event. So it's going to be very busy. You will see during the flight we get through some busy phases, especially during the approach. Would I recommend as a newbie to make such flight? Definitely not, but of course it will be a very nice video to watch for you to get used to flying on VATSIM and to learn as much as possible throughout this flight. Okay, so again I will try to cover as much as possible throughout this flight, and hopefully you will learn something and be inspired for your own flights later on the VATSIM network. Now as you can see, our Boeing 777 freighter of Lufthansa Cargo is already nicely parked here on the cargo apron at Riga, but first we'll take a look at how to create a flight plan, and then we'll jump in the flight deck to get the flight started. Now as always, a bit of a disclaimer before we start. I am a second officer on the Boeing 777 and 787 in real life, so of course I will try to mix in as much possible real life knowledge into this flight. However, the procedures used in this video do not specifically relate to any airline, the airline used in this video or my airline. Due to the limitations of the simulator, the VATSIM, single pilot operations and the home cockpit environment, it is not always possible to achieve the highest level of realism or accuracy of procedures. So things you see in the video may be or are sometimes done differently in the real world. So this is just a flight in flight simulator, nothing more, nothing less, and therefore please do not use this video for real-world training purposes. With that out of the way, of course, first thing we need to think about is creating a flight plan so that the air traffic controllers know what we are going to do. So let's jump into the briefing room and let's get started. Alright, so welcome into the briefing room, and this is where we're going to prepare our flight for today. And as always, preparation is already half of the work, or maybe even more of it. By creating a flight plan, we can not only prepare ourselves, but then we also have a flight plan for air traffic control to know what we're doing. Of course, they need to know our actual plan, how we're going to fly from A to B, or in this case from Riga to Frankfurt. So in real life, of course, especially for the big airline operations, their dispatchers will do this job. They create flight plans, try to calculate the most optimum flight path and route, and then they send it to the pilots, and then we can review it and kind of make decisions based on fuel, for example. Now in the flight sim world, you can do this by a little website called Simbrief. Go to simbrief.com. There you will have to make a little account, and then you can create flight plans very easily, okay, so that all the automation will do all the work for you. Okay, so if you go into the dispatch a part of Simbrief, here you have some overview of your created flight plans before, and the first thing we kind of want to do is get an airframe for our flight. So I have here some saved airframes, and the one we're going to be flying today is the Delta Alpha Lima Foxtrot Alpha. That's the airplane that we have here. So I'm just going to click edit. Here you can see what it kind of does, but you can of course always add a new airframe depending on what airplane you're flying, and then you can click new airframe. You can select one of the aircraft types right here. So for example, let's pick another 777 right here, freighter, and then you can assign profiles to it. For example, it kind of speaks for itself, but you can use one of the standard profiles listed right here, or that you've created yourself over time to have an aircraft type, and then the aircraft type contains all the performance information that the flight plan will be using to calculate the optimum flight path. Okay, so it kind of speaks for itself. Just make sure you select the correct aircraft type that you're actually going to be flying on VATSIM. If you're going to fly 737-700, pick a 737-700, not some other aircraft type, okay? Because ATC also depends on these calculations, all right? Now, then we're going to create a flight plan. You can create a flight plan by clicking new flight, and we're just going to fill in all the information right here. What I'm going to do though is load my saved flight. Now I am recording this way after I actually recorded the flight, so some of the information you will see here is already outdated and might not correspond to the values that we're going to use inside the flight deck during the flight, but just to give you an idea, it's we're just going to load all the saved values from that day when I created this flight plan. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. Just take it step by step, and you have to fill in some information. So for example, the airline you're going to be flying. Now we're going to be flying Lufthansa cargo, and what you need to fill in here is the ICAO code. And ICAO is a 3-letter code, so that's also what we're going to use when we connect to VATSIM. Always connect with a 3-letter airline code. Okay, so for example, if you're flying British Airways, your code would be BAW. We can look that up on Google, and your call sign would be Speedbird. Okay, and we're flying Lufthansa cargo. Lufthansa cargo uses GEC as code, and then their call sign is Lufthansa cargo. All right, so each airline has these codes and might also have a different call sign attached to it. Then the flight number. Well, you can look up some flight numbers. Maybe you can, for example, go to Flight Radar. There we go. For example, you can look up GEC, so Lufthansa cargo, and you can maybe view some flights. So maybe you can have some call sign inspiration. For example, some airlines might have even or odd numbered flight numbers out of flying out of their home base, and then on the way back, it's the other way around. So, for example, here we have a flight to Shanghai. As you can see, it uses here the 2-letter code, but here we can click on some more information, and you can see here the call sign Lufthansa cargo 8400. Some airlines might also use alphanumeric call signs, so your flight number might be 8400, but then their call sign would be, for example, something random, Lufthansa cargo 84 Foxtrot or something like that. So that's something you also see and hear in real life and also on VATSIM. So you can kind of get some inspiration for picking a realistic call sign. Of course, if you have a nice line flight, maybe you're flying a British Airways flight out of London to Amsterdam, for example, well, then of course you can look up flights between London Heathrow and Amsterdam. Let's take a look. As a city pair, well, we can see some inspiration for call signs here. And here we also have inspiration regarding alphanumeric call signs. So as you can see, Speedbird, British Airways flight 436 actually uses the call sign Speedbird 3 Kilo Golf. Right, so this is a way to kind of find out what call sign to use. All right, back to Simbrief. Of course, you have to fill out the departure airport, also ICAO codes, which is 4 letters for airports, and then the arrival airport, and then an alternate. Now, here we have our route already. As you can see, if you put in a route, it will automatically come up with one of the routes below. Now, of course, you do have to consider a little bit the weather. In real life, there are certain minima for this, so the aircraft has certain minima, and then on top of that, we put additional restrictions for alternate selection. So if the weather is very bad at your alternate, you might have to pick something else. Well, in this case, as you can see, the system picked Echo Delta Delta Kilo, which is Cologne, for us. And as you can see, it's very light winds. There are no clouds pretty much. So this is a good alternate to pick. But in real life, there's some more factors like, are there services available, what equipment is available in terms of ILS, and also on the ground, are there hotels available to get the passenger somewhere. So do give some consideration to picking your alternate, okay? But in this case, that's fine. Now the departure time, now of course that would be today, 9th of March, when I'm recording this, but the time is in UTC, so of course everything in aviation uses UTC time. So it would be 17:30, which would be right now 18:30 local time in Frankfurt, for example. So this is the estimated of blocks time. If you hover over it, you can actually see what it also says. So this is the time where you start to push back, basically, when the aircraft starts moving. So you can kind of of course, take that into consideration because ATC also will depend on this, will rely on your information regarding this. So make sure it's kind of correct and that you are able to make that time, okay? So that's what we have here. Then the aircraft, well, we already selected our aircraft, and it will fill in some information regarding the profiles of the aircraft, like with what speeds it will climb and what it will descend with, for example. You can leave this as default, of course, later on, as you get more used to flying on VATSIM and creating specific aircraft, you can fine-tune this to your own liking. The cost index is basically a value which determines how efficient your flight is going to be. The lower the value, the more efficient the airplane will fly. The higher the value, the faster it will try to fly in order to make up time. Okay, now we're going to leave it at a low value, but as you can see, you can increase it all the way up if you want. But something, you know, realistic would be like about 10 to 200 for the 777. If you go any higher, it doesn't really make sense anymore. You're just burning a lot more fuel for no reason. So we're going to leave it at 10. We're going to fly nice and efficient today. Here we have our registration. So that's the actual registration of the aircraft that you can see on the tail. So if you have picked a livery in Flight Simulator and you parked your aircraft, you can see what tail number you're flying with, and that's also something you enter in the flight plan. Now the cell call code, this is important if you're going to fly oceanic, especially. This is a code 2 times 2 letters that ATC can send an audio on the HF frequency, for example, in oceanic airspace to call you up, okay? So you don't have to monitor the HF radios all the time. Now this really depends on the registration. Each aircraft, unique aircraft registration has a unique cell call code. So you can look up the registration of your aircraft and look up the cell call code. So that's what you can enter here in the flight plan. I won't go into much detail on that. Make sure you watch one of the many oceanic video tutorials for more information regarding that. But do note, not every aircraft has a cell call code. So if you cannot find it, don't worry, just leave it empty. Alright, so here you can select a layout. I always prefer KLM for some reason, but you can also pick other layouts, of course. And here we have the IREX cycle. Now the IREX cycle, I will also show in the cockpit, is basically the database containing all the information regarding waypoints, airways, sits and stars at the airport. So all the route information that an aircraft needs. You have to update this. You can, for example, get a Navigraph subscription. And with that Navigraph subscription, you can have the latest data available. You can also fly with outdated cycles, but as time goes on, you know, procedures might change at airports. Maybe at your airport where you are flying, the procedures don't change at all, but maybe in a few years they will. So sometimes you need to consider updating the AROC data, okay? So then Simbrief and the aircraft will use the latest data that's also used in the real world to calculate the flight plan based on all the latest waypoints and airways, etc. Okay. Now I'm using everything in kilograms. I want to have a bit more detailed flight maps. Taxi fuel, I just select 25 minutes of a taxi fuel, basically to take into account taxi time, but also a bit of APU time on the ground, because we're going to be using the APU, of course, to power the aircraft in the early stages before engine start. Flight rules, IVR, we're going to be flying instrument flight rules, and we're going to have a scheduled flights, and we have one alternate. And then here you have some other things you can adjust, okay? Now it will come up with some information here, you know, which runway it expects. It will automatically fill in some of this data. Now, I think in the video I use runway 18, so you can, for example, select a new runway, and then it will also select new sits and stars. So sits are standard instrument departures. These are routes that take you out of the airport, basically to the first waypoint in your flight plan, and stars are standard terminal arrival routes, which you know, take you from the last waypoint on your flight plan towards one of the approaches to the airport. Okay, so yeah, we'll select that, and then here, as you can see, it has selected a new SID for us to take us to our first waypoint, Valet. Okay, so it's going to be the Valet to Foxtrot departure, probably from runway 18 at Riga. Now it's important to kind of you know, make a good educated guess what runway is going to be in use. Of course, you can hover over here and check the weather. Based on that, you can make a deduction of what runway would be used. But again, you can also look at the flight radar. So for example, Frankfurt, well, let's take a look at Frankfurt right now and see if we can find it in the first place. There we go. You can kind of see, okay, what do they use in real life? VATSIM controllers will most likely also use, you know, the runways that are being used in real life, or at least if there are multiple runways in that direction, for example, one of the runways in that direction. So you can kind of have a good idea. So as you can see, this airplane is approaching the 07 left. So yeah, 07 left seems like a good idea. They're also taking off here from runway 18, it seems like, and also from runway 07 center. So yeah, it gives you a basic idea of yeah, what runways are being used at the airport. So you can also use that for your Simbrief flight plan. So we're going to leave 07 left in there. And the altitude, we'll just leave it at auto. The Simbrief will calculate automatically what altitude we're going to be flying. Passengers, you can specify that. Well, for a cargo airplane, likely none. We can leave that at 0, for example. And the freight, so how much cargo you're actually going to be carrying, we can just let it decide itself, and it will automatically come up with a payload and a 0 fuel weight. Okay, so you can basically leave these values at auto, and then it will just come up with a weight for the aircraft itself. Okay, then here we have some fuel entries that we can enter. Basically, what I always do is have some contingency fuel. So this is fuel that you burn for example, avoiding weather, or maybe you know, a little deviation for traffic. You know, little things in the route that are not planned. Of course, we would love to fly this plane completely, but it could be, for example, that due to weather we need to deviate a lot, or maybe we are vectored around by air traffic control a little bit longer. So this is fuel that extra that you take with you to account for those kind of deviations. Okay, and here we have the reserve fuel. This is kind of the fuel you want to be landing with. So the minimum amount of fuel you want to be at the arrival airport or alternate with that fuel. Okay, this is kind of a legal thing. I won't go too much in depth, but for example, you could pick 30 minutes, or if you want to have a bit more margin, for example, 45 minutes. Okay. So it's not fuel that you should use, but in the worst case scenario, you've tried multiple landings, you've tried multiple approaches, then you can still use it, but preferably not. Okay. What I do like to do for VATSIM though is take some extra fuel. I've had a flight recently where I was flying into Warsaw, and it was a 180-minute delay, I think. Yeah, that was a bit crazy. So I do take some extra fuel for the VATSIM flights, especially now I'm recording a video. Just don't want to rush too much recording this video, and especially if you're a new pilot, you know, take some extra fuel with you, so you don't have to rush. You know, you don't have to worry about the fuel so much. All right, so I'm taking a whopping 45 minutes extra fuel, which is a lot. But yeah, it just you know, for the flight sim purposes, it just makes it a little bit easier. And it does get very busy on Flight Simulator, on VATSIM network these days. So it doesn't hurt to take at least a little bit extra, you know, to account for holding. So a busy event on a weekend might easily let you end up for 30 minutes of holding, and then the contingency fuel will not allow enough for that. All right, so taking that extra fuel gives you that more room to hold, to wait for traffic, or for example, in case of bad weather, to make some go-arounds and you know, to try again. So give that some consideration. Especially if you're new to the VATSIM network, make sure you just take that extra fuel with you. All right. Now here's the routes. Now Simbrief does usually a very good job at already coming up with the routes. So you can just use that. If you want to look up more routes, you can go a bit more advanced. As you can see, it shows some suggestions from different sources. You, for example, can here validate your flight plan if you're flying within Europe for Eurocontrol validation. You can look up here. This is a nice little website. If you click on it, it will take you to a real-world flight plan database. You can look up real-world flight plans. So let me just show you that. You can, for example, here search for a flight from Riga to Frankfurt. So let's do search. And then here you can see the date of the most recent flights. So these are quite old flights, but you know, on more busier routes, you'll probably find some more routes that are more recent. So you can just click on the flight, and here you have the flight plan, okay, of this particular flight. And kind of, you know, you can try this and then just copy paste that in the route section right here, and then Simbrief will just plot that for you over here, okay. So these are some different sources, but on busy routes, you know, routes that are flown a lot, you can easily find one of the recent routes that should probably be fine, okay. Alright, here you have some more additional options, but we're not going to look into that right now. So what I do want to show you is here, here the route plotting over the chart. Here you can, for example, turn on some weather information like weather radar, significant weather. Again, this will not be the weather that's going to be in the video, the rest of the video later on, but it gives you a bit of an idea of what you can encounter. So for example, well, here today it looks like it's going to be very nice weather. We do have some headwinds. We can see by the wind barbs, they go from the top here to the base. So the wind direction is generally like in a northeasterly direction. So that's nice. We do have a bit of rain here, but for example right here we can see on the chart, well, we have some quite some icing right here, for example, and we also have some turbulence right here. I actually have a separate video on that, on how to read weather charts, so if you find that interesting you can definitely look into that. But this is very much part of your preparation, you know. If your arrival airport is in this area, well, this is a very much consideration, you know. Together with the weather information at the airport, you will see that there's, for example, a lot of wind and rain at the airport. Well, this definitely is one of those cases where you take some extra fuel in case things go bad, okay? But in this case, in this example, as you can see, there's not much bad weather. There's some snow here in the north, also with some icing between, an undetermined altitude and flight level 180. So yeah, give a bit of a review of your route and already, you know, kind of think ahead. Okay, I'm going to be departing Riga. We're going to be flying a little bit towards the west, then southwards into Polish airspace and then German airspace. So you can kind of already build up that mental picture of the flight that you're going to make, okay? So yeah, that's basically it. If you're going to fly more advanced routes, for example, North Atlantic, that's a whole different story. I also got a whole separate video on that if you want to watch it. Links are in the description. But, you know, your basic A to B flight within Europe, within the US, or within South America, wherever you want to fly, just basically entails this, okay? So if you filled everything in and you're ready to go, of course you can create some multiple flight plans. So for example, we can click calculate and compare. So now it calculates a certain flight with an airtime, for example, of 1 hour and 59 minutes. But maybe you want to fly a little bit faster because the cargo needs to be there in Frankfurt on time, for example. So now we've entered cost index 100. Let's see if we win a lot. Well, as you can see, we win 2 minutes of airtime by raising up the cost index to 100. So, but of course at the cost of a little bit more fuel burn. So you can see here the red text below that we do have a bit of extra fuel to take for those 2 minutes. Now on short flights, again, it doesn't really matter that much. It's not going to make too much of a difference, but especially for long haul flights, if you're going to be in the air for 12 hours, for example, adjusting the cost index is going to have a big influence, okay? We'll just leave it at 10 for now, and then we're going to generate a flight plan. There we go. It's now going to calculate, you know, what altitudes we should be flying at, and create a whole briefing package for it. Again, the numbers that you're gonna see here will not correspond to the actual values we're going to be using during the video, but it will just give you a basic idea. For example, the load sheet, what our estimated takeoff weight will be, what our estimated landing weight will be, things like that. So yeah, it gives you a very nice idea of what is going to be happening. So give this a little review, you know, look through the flight plan, look through the briefing package. You have all kinds of information right here about the route, what times you're going to pass certain waypoints. You can look below, for example, also the weather at the different airports. It comes with a lot of weather charts and also a bit of a terrain overview. As you can see here, a lot of information over here that you can read about your flight. Even NOTAMs, so notice to airmen, which contains information about, for example, construction works at the airport, or runways that are closed, taxiways that are closed. You can make it as detailed as you want, of course. Not everything is going to be simulated on VATSIM, but it's all up to you what you want to do with that, okay? So basically we've created a flight plan. As you can see, it planned it at optimum flight level. So as you can see, it's going to fly at flight level 320. So that's nice to know. That's the first altitude we're going to be flying at. And yeah, that's going to be our flight. So what you can do now is pre-file. Of course, we have this flight plan not only for ourselves. We need to file this flight plan to air traffic control. Air traffic control on VATSIM needs to know what your plan is, okay? So the way it works, before connecting to the VATSIM network, you can pre-file your flight plan right here. So if you just click on that, as you can see here, we can click pre-file. It will fill in all the information on the flight plan form on VATSIM for you, so you can just file it right away. If you filled in all the information correctly on Simbrief, then it will also fill in all the information correctly on that flight plan form. And then we're going to connect. Of course, we're going to connect with the same call sign, so Lufthansa Cargo 8147, and then the network will recognize that you are linked to that flight plan. So as soon as you connect, air traffic control that's online will already see that your flight plan is there. Okay, so that's basically all you have to do. So just click on pre-file, just log in. There we go. So here's the flight plan form. As you can see, Simbrief has filled in everything already for us. So we don't really have to worry about, just make sure that the departure time you've planned is something that you can make. And that's basically it. So yeah, once it's ready to go, once you have given this a quick review, all the information is in there correctly, we can click File Flight Plan. And then next thing to do is simply to park your aircraft up at a gate or a stand or a cargo stand in our case, and not on a runway. Don't be on one of the active runways. Just park your aircraft somewhere nicely and realistic. And then we're going to connect to the VATSIM network via vPilot, and then we're gonna get going from there. Alright, so welcome inside the Boeing 777 freighter cockpit here at Riga airport. We have safely parked at a stand and connected to the VATSIM network. It's still very early. I want to record a part of this flight before I'm going to make dinner, and then after dinner we're going to continue with the flight. But it's nice when you are, especially when you're new to the VATSIM network, or if you're joining busy events, to just take your time, get the aircraft ready in your own time, and then once it's ready, start with your flight. So we'll take a look at how it goes. The first thing you always want to do is make sure that you have the correct amount of fuel on board. Okay, so that's always the first thing that I do when I enter the flight deck. You can do that through the PMDG, through the FS Actions menu, and then you could adjust the fuel and the payload. So we'll just take a look at our Simbrief flight plan. And we'll take a look at what kind of block fuel it has calculated for us. So that's the total amount of fuel, including alternate fuel and extra fuel that we took with us, all the fuel that we want to have on board. And as you can see, it's about 26,000 kilograms. So we'll just round it up to, well, in this case, 25.9. So we'll just enter that here in FS Actions, and the system will automatically distribute the fuel between the fuel tanks. In this case, it's just a short flight, so everything will go into the wing tanks and the center tanks will be left empty. Same with the payload. Of course, Simbrief has made calculations, based on a certain weight, and if you're going to fly at a totally different weight, then the calculations don't make sense anymore. So you really want to make sure that you enter the zero fuel weight, so that's the total weight of the airplane that we're going to be flying with, without the weight of the fuel. So as you can see here, the estimated zero fuel weight for today is 203,480 kilograms. So we'll also round it up to 203.5. There we go. As you can see, quite a low load level. We're not completely full today, but at least now we're working with the same weights as has been calculated in the flight plan. Okay, so that's the first thing that I always do. So when you make a VATSIM flight, you just want to have a nice structure in your flight, have a nice workflow like we do in real life. It's always step by step, and you work through the different procedures as you go on with your flight and with your preparations on the ground. So I'm going to pick up the flight here from the pre-flight procedure basically, and the FMS programming. I've already done the whole electrical power up and the preliminary pre-flight. This is kind of the state, the turnaround state in which you would find the aircraft at the gate. So if you want a bit more detail on the whole startup process all the way from cold and dark, make sure to check out my cold and dark startup tutorial video for the Boeing 777. It's a new one using the new PMDG 777 and MSFS. There I go in a whole lot more detail regarding the setup procedure. So we're just going to pick it up somewhere right now, and we're going to start by simply loading in the flight plan. Okay, Now what I already did before is I took the electronic flight bag here and I requested my data from Simbrief. You have to link your Simbrief account in the EFB and then you can request data. So now the flight plan is loaded in the EFB and then we later can use that to magically uplink our route in the FMS. So let's take a look here. We'll go to the FMS CDU here and yeah, just like basically what in the Golden Dark startup tutorial video I did, just go through all the items, make sure the model is correct, engine ratings, things like that, using the latest data. If you do not have the latest ARAC data, it's not a huge problem, but you know, procedures may get out of date, so sometimes you need to update your nav data through, for example, a Navigraph subscription, and then you have all the latest waypoints, airways, SID, stars, procedures at airports in the flight management system. So it's important to update it, especially once it gets outdated at airports you often fly at. Position initialization is already done, so we have the aircraft has aligned itself with the latest position. And here we can request a route, so we'll take a look at what Simbrief route says. As you can see, it says Riga to Frankfurt. That's our route for today, so we're going to load that in. You can even set payload and set fuel through this way if you want, but we already did that manually just now. So I'll just select the route, there we go, and then it's going to request it. Alright, so give it some time. It's gonna, in real life, you know, through radio waves, it's going to send it to the aircraft, and it's kind of simulated here as well. It always takes some time for it to come in, but as you can see here, an uplink is available. When data uplink descends, we can just clear these messages for now. There we go, and we're going to load the route, and as you can see, it's loading up. In the meantime, I'm going to take a look at my briefing preview just to make sure I have all the waypoints that I expect, and we're just gonna cross-check in a moment to see if we have the correct flight plan. Okay, so as you can see, it's been loaded. Riga to Frankfurt, Lufthansa cargo 8147, and you could already enter a runway here. Now, as briefed already before, I do expect runway 18. It's quite simple at this airport. If you have another airport, you may want to hold off with this a little while until you get your clearance, but in this case we kind of already know what departure we're going to be flying and which runway we're going to be departing from. So I'm just going to load that in here, departure arrival page, runway 18, and then the valid to Foxtrot departure, which is this one. There we go. And then go back to route, and then we'll just activate this for now and execute, and then we can make a route copy. This is kind of handy to have in the background in case you mess up something in your flight plan. You can make a route copy, and then in the route 2 page you have a backup of your flight plan. Alright, so it's nice to do that. What I always like to do is now go through the legs page. Now the whole departure we're going to check just a little bit later on, but I'm mainly interested also now in the route, so I'm just going to check all the waypoints, whether all the waypoints in my route are really there. So I'm just going to cross-check that all the waypoints are in there. Of course, it hasn't calculated any speeds or weights or altitudes for those waypoints because we haven't loaded any performance data in there yet. But through this way we can just check it out, the waypoints themselves. So it looks like that's all in, and then we end up at Kerax. Now we'll load in a departure or an arrival a little bit later on, so we'll just enter Frankfurt at the end right now and hit execute. Okay, so there we go, the route has been loaded in. Let's go to init.ref and see if we can accept this performance data. Usually it's a bit off, I notice, with Simbrief, so I usually just enter it myself or manually adjust it at least. Let's see, the zero fuel weight we have calculated was 203.5. So let's make sure that is entered. All the big boxes is stuff you want to, enter. So now, as you can see, the aircraft calculated the gross weight of the aircraft. So the zero fuel weight plus the fuel weight equals the total amount of weight of the airplane. The reserves, let's take a look if that's also correct, which is usually the final plus the alternate reserve view, and seems to be a correct figure. That's okay. Initial altitude is going to be 380, that's correct. Cost index of 10, which is a low cost index, especially in longer flights. When you increase the cost index to like values of like 100 or 200, it will save you some minutes. This is what airlines play around with a lot, but in this case we're not in a rush. It doesn't make, you can, in Simbrief you can calculate with different cost index values, but it doesn't really make that much sense on a short route like this. So we're flying nice and economical today. So the performance data is in there as well, and then later on we'll explore these pages to set our takeoff data. One thing we can do, and usually we wait with that until we have fuel on board, so the aircraft can make the correct calculations according to its determined gross weight, is ask for some wind data. So we go to route data, and then we hit load. It already came up with that, and then we have wind data at all the waypoints, and this is going to help us to calculate our path and our times at the different waypoints, of course, more accurately based on the winds that we find at altitude. So I just requested that and executed that, and now we have wind information. For example, here it knows the winds at the different altitudes of our flight path, so that's really nice. Okay, that's it. Mostly you can take a look at the VNAV pages quickly. Let's see the transition altitude here. Let's get a SID chart here. You can see what the speeds will be during the climb, and well, 5,000 feet is transition altitude, so that's correct. In principle, you do not really have to touch these pages, but just to give it a bit of a review. And then what I always like to do is leave this FMS on the progress page right here. And then here we can see if we would depart right now, we would arrive at 14.6 tons. Okay, so that's the basic FMS programming done. Then I usually just like to go through the pre-flight flow. Again, we're very early, but it doesn't matter, we can already do that. So I'll just scan through the cockpit. I won't go through all the items right here, but just make sure that all the switches are in the position they should be for this stage of flight. APU is still off. In reality, you know, with cold weather around here, you might want to turn that on, especially if you have a passenger version of this aircraft, of course, to make sure that the cabin is heated, unless you have good external power or external air. But we'll turn it on a little bit later. As you can see, we are running on external power for now. So all these switches are in the correct position. Emergency lights are armed. Perfect. The window heat's on. Hydraulics panel is still set like this. That's correct. Okay. We might turn on a little bit of lights later as well, because it's getting a little bit dark here. Okay, cargo fire switches are on normal position. Out starts on. That's all good. The fuel pumps are all off at this stage. Oh, the NTIs all left on auto. Now on the ground, you always want to make sure, you know, when the aircraft is powered, to have some navigation lights on, and of course also the local lights to show off your logo on the tail of the aircraft. And the other lights are still off at this stage. That's all good. Okay, so this is kind of the first officer flow that I'm going through right now. Of course, you could also do it from the first officer seat if you want to be perfect. But we'll turn on the packs. Well, they are off for now, but we'll put them to auto. And once the APU starts running, then we get air conditioning through those packs, thanks to the APU bleed air. Alright, this is all perfect. Let's go to the first officer side to first do their side. Let's turn on the flight director. Let's see, we do have to set a pressure, which today is very high. I think we see the weather currently 1049er, very high pressure currently over here. So let's make sure we set that. And as you have loaded a route in the FMS, you will see that it should coincide with the landing altitude bar here on the BFD, so that's correct. Okay, you can turn all of this onto your liking. Of course, we want to have some traffic later on. VOR needles will be nice. Weather radar and terrain display is something you leave off at this stage, well, especially the weather radar, because it's actual radio waves that are being sent out of the nose to the aircraft. You don't want to radiate the ground crew people, so leave that off at this stage. But you could, for example, for situational awareness, turn on the airports, things like that. Okay, then we go down here. The oxygen was tested already. Okay, it's all good to go. Perfect. We'll set the RT brake to RTO. We're going to just reset all the checklists at the start of the flight. There we go. Perfect. Well, you can set the radios to your liking, of course. I'm just gonna tune 1215. That is the distress frequency, which you can monitor in the background already. There we go. Other than that, everything seems to be set correctly here. Then I'll switch off to the captain side. Same thing here. Make sure you set the QNH, very important. Traffic is on. Okay, perfect. I have airports in my view as well, maybe data as well, so we can see the different times at the different waypoints. We'll have the flight director. Speeds, we'll just leave it everything as standard right now, but all the switches are in the position they should be. Although I'll switch this one to 1000. Okay. Let's see if we can turn on some lights here, guys, because it's getting rather dark. Of course, we have the beautiful dome lights, which we can use for that. Oxygen is tested on this side as well. I'll just open up the performance tool here, which you're going to use later. Perfect. Now also make sure you check the displays at this stage. You know, toga should be specifically for the 777 visible. Make sure there are no warning flags, things like that. It's all looking good. We do have to take this one as well. All the way up to 1049 hectopascals. Okay. Perfect. We'll set the parking brake, which we can do at this stage. There we go. Parking brake is set. Perfect. And this is all perfect. Alternate flaps off. Yep. Okay. Fire extinguishers. Okay, this is all set. I usually like to give a little wiggle of these things on my throttle here to make sure that everything is moving correctly. One thing important for the radios is that you make sure that you are listening out on the frequency. So we have here the radio, so the left radio and the right radio, which we're going to be using primarily. And you want to monitor those radios, okay? So make sure that you actually turn the volume knob up, and you can see with a green light that we are actually listening out on that radio, which will also turn up blue on vPilot. If the frequency is blue, you are listening out on that frequency. And make sure you select the correct mix selector. So make sure that you actually, by selecting the mic on the left VHF radio, that you are actually talking to the aircraft controller on this frequency. Okay, so the mix selection is very important to make sure you don't miss out. Otherwise, you're trying to transmit, but you're transmitting either on one of the wrong radios or maybe on no radio at all. So make sure you select the mic as well. Okay, that is kind of completed. So I will just start to have some dinner right now, and then we'll get the flight started, as ATC will come online in a little bit later, and then we can also start running through the checklist, do some performance calculations, things like that. But as I said, just have a nice order in your setup. We've done the flight plan. We've connected to VATSIM on a safe place, and we have gone through the aircraft, all the pre-flight procedure. We've set up the FMS for the most part. So right now we can safely wait for ATC to pop up in a little bit later. Alright, welcome back. We just had a nice dinner, one nice last dinner before we head on and continue with our flight here from Riga to Frankfurt. ATC is slowly popping up. It's around the time that the event should start, so that's now good to see. So we can slowly continue our flight. First thing, let's do a pre-flight checklist. We went through the whole pre-flight flow, although I did see I missed one thing. And this is to set the heading, the runway heading for departure. Initial altitude we expect for the SID, as you can see on the chart, is 4,000. That's already set. The pre-flight flow is done, so we can do the pre-flight checklist, and then we'll get an ATIS, and then we can get some information about the weather and the conditions at the airport, and do some performance calculations based on the runway we expect. So let's go through the checklist. The checklist button. Here we have the pre-flight checklist. Pre-flight checklist. The oxygen is tested 100%. That's of course the oxygen masks we've tested, and then it's set to 100% oxygen. Flight instruments. We have heading. Always check multiple headings over here. 357 on the standby, and then also on the compass. 357. And also on the first officer side. As checked, and the altimeter is a whopping 1049 hectopascals, or if you're in the US, you're going to be using inches of mercury, and it's set on 3 sides and showing should show the airport elevation, which is around 50 feet, which is correct. That completes the pre-flight checklist. Okay, so Riga ground is already online. The ATIS is also online, so we can you can either listen to the voice ATIS. You can actually tune the ATIS frequency in the radio and then listen to it. ATIS usually would be done on the second radio, the right radio in this case, on the 777. But of course, the 777 has a more modern system where you can request the ATIS through the ACARS system. Now you have to, in order to make use of ACARS and the CPDLC function, so the text messaging between you and the air traffic controller, you have to create a so-called HOPI ID, and then you have to enter that ID in the system. Make sure you read up on the PMDG documentation on how to set this up. In real life we have something similar. You also have to make sure that some information is in the system for it to actually work. So do that beforehand. Maybe when you got the aircraft for the first time, make sure you just set it up by reading the documentation. But as you can see, if we go to flight information here, we can go to ATIS request, and we can simply enter the airport. Okay, so we're going to go Riga, and then we'll use VATSIM as the source because that is of course active. So we'll just send that request, and then we'll see what it comes up with, and then we can do a little performance calculation for our flight. There we go, we got a new message. So there's the ATIS coming in. There we go. Riga ATIS information alpha at 1620. Kind of check the time. 1658, so that's about 30 minutes ago. The information letter, it always changes when there's new information, so when there's a new ATIS coming up, it will change to Bravo, Charlie, etc. So by knowing you have information alpha, you can let the controller know I have the latest information about the weather and the conditions at the airport. Runway use, expect ILS Yankee approach, runway use 18 as we expected, transition level 55. We are using the transition altitude for our departure, which is 4,000 feet, as stated on the chart, or correction, actually 5,000 feet. So this is only for arriving traffic basically. The surface wind is calm, visibility CAV OK, so clouds and visibility are OK, temperature is -1, dew point -5, inclination 1050. So we immediately change that, and whenever you get some new information like that, you can just enter it immediately. So 1050 on the altimeters. There we go, and it's also set on this side. What else do we have? Bird activity observed in the vicinity of the aerodrome. Advised stand, aircraft type, and information alpha. So that means at your first contact with the controller, in this case it's going to be the ground controller for us, they want to know our aircraft stand, which is 502, our aircraft type 777 freighter, and that we have received information alpha. So this is good to go. Based on that, we can already make some performance calculations, and we're going to use the EFB for that. So here we go to a performance tool, and here we can select the runway. You can also click import from OFB, it will auto select some information. But let's see, runway 18. is the one we're going to be calculating for. As you can see, it already fills in all the information automatically. Now sometimes you might want to do an intersection departure, and then you can shorten the runway length. On this Navigraph chart here, Jeppesen chart, you can actually see where you can find that information. So if you want to calculate using a shortened distance, and that's usually quite often done, because a lot of times at airports you do get intersection departures, so it's better to calculate with a shorter runway length beforehand, so you don't have to recalculate it while taxiing. So for example, in this case, let's take a look at the ground chart. You know, hypothetically they could allow us to take us off from Echo, and then if we calculate for Echo, we can immediately accept that. But if they send us to Golf, then it's also no problem. Then we just have some extra power, extra margin on our takeoff performance. But in this case, I do expect a full runway length, so we're just going to leave it as this. Runway conditions are dry. Flap configuration, we'll leave that optimum. Rating, I will switch that to takeoff, because this 777 version doesn't have the fixed T-rate option, so I'll leave it at takeoff. Anti-ice will probably be off. Anti-ice would something you'll be turning on, like engine anti-ice, when there's visible moisture in the air and when it's very cold outside, less than 10 degrees centigrade. But as you can see, it is cold, -1, but it's not very humid. It's actually very clear skies, so icing won't be a problem for this departure. Now the weight, let's go back to our flight plan for that. So we take the estimated takeoff weight, and what I always like to do, as said in the cold and dark startup tutorial video before, is take a little margin. So let's say 1000 kilograms, because the final load sheet might be a little bit different, okay? And by adding that extra weight, you not only create a little bit extra margin for yourself, but you also cater for any other cargo that's being loaded, and so you don't have to recalculate again, okay? When you receive the final load sheet with the final weights of the airplane. So that's set. The center of gravity we have to read from the aircraft in this case. We can simply click this line, select key, it will show up 26.1. So we can enter that. We could actually also just import from aircraft. It's even easier. And then the air conditioning is going to be auto. And then we can of course import the weather. Let's see what the ATIS said about the wind. Winds are calm. Okay. Well, in that case, let's see what happens when we click import weather. You can see it calculates with some wind. What you could do, for example, just to cater for any, tailwind that might, with calm winds, the winds tend to kind of shift and go in multiple directions. So what we could do is simply add a bit of tailwind right here. So winds from the other direction of the runway, and then yeah, we are on the safe side regarding our performance. Outside air temperatures -1, and immediately in the meantime the QNH has changed to 1050. Okay, so based on that we can make a calculation. There we go, and as you can see it gives us the following calculation. Going to be a flaps 5 takeoff with a 69 degree assumed temperature. Nice. So let's enter that. We can already enter flaps 5 in our takeoff reference page. If you have trouble finding it, you can just go to the index right here, and by hitting index ref and then index, and here you can find all those pages. So takeoff, flaps 5, and then an assumed temperature of 69 degrees centigrade. Perfect. Okay. So that's the first thing that we can enter, and now we trick the engine into thinking that it's a very hot 69 degrees outside, but it's not. But in doing so, we limit the performance of the engine a little bit. Okay, saving the wear and tear on the engine and the costs of maintenance. Okay, so that is done. Perfect. The V-speeds, we're just gonna wait a little bit with that until we have received our load sheet, but that should be okay. Okay, so we've done some performance calculations. We've done the whole pre-flight already. Most of the FMS is set up. What I usually kind of like to do now is get the aircraft outside a little bit ready. Now it is very cold, so let's start the APU, because it's gonna get cold on board the airplane without any air. So just start the APU. The APU will automatically draw fuel from one of the fuel tanks. And what I usually like to do, you know, slowly get ready at the stage on the ground. So I'm using GSX for this. So here we are, we have GSX here. We can prepare for pushback and departure, so that would hopefully close all the doors and start off, you know, kind of removing all the cargo trucks that are still loading the airplane. And while the APU is starting, we can maybe request our clearance. It's something you kind of want to do 20 to 30 minutes for before departure, so it's about 24 minutes to go right now. Now, you could do it via voice, you know, at the delivery frequency or ground frequency or tower frequency, whichever one, you know, pops up first. But these days, it's mostly done via CPDLC. So, or ACARS, we can request a departure clearance right here. And if you look in vPilot, you can usually request controller info for a certain controller, and it will usually show some information about what PDC logon code you should use, so pre-departure clearance logon code. So as you can see, in this case, it's simply Riga. It's usually the ICAO code of the airport. Departure Riga, destination Frankfurt. ATIS, we have received information alpha before, and we are at stand 502. There we go. So this is basically going to send the clearance, and the clearance is necessary for us to actually, you know, execute our flight plan, to start our flight basically. So let's send that. Hopefully the button will actually click. Let's see. There we go. Now it's sending. In the meantime, the APU is running, so that's nice. Because the APU is running, as you can see, it will take over the external power. So we're going to remove the external power as well, and if you had any external air, you also want to remove that before starting the APU, or at least before turning on the PACs and the recirculation fans on the 777. But we're going to remove the external power. There we go. And then we're going to physically remove the external power as well here on the ground. To actually get the GSX moving. So let's see, I think we can release the ground power, yeah. And we can also, we do not need de-icing. We can also remove the chocks here, so that the pushback truck can just get into position. You basically want to get your pushback utility to a point where it's ready to push back upon parking brake release. That's also how the way it works in the real world. You know, as soon as you...
Departure check completed. Okay. Bypass pin inserted.
Perfect. You know, it's also something that you do in the real world. You know, as soon as you get your startup and pushback clearance, you should be ready to go. All right, and this is where we wanna be. Let's see, did we get any clearance yet? I didn't see it yet.
Locking gear.
And as you heard, also the pushback controller has told us that the bypass pin is inserted, and this means that we can power the hydraulics in a moment. So we'll do that momentarily. Okay. Let's take a quick look at the doors here on the airplane. Yeah, some is still open. We'll have to do that ourselves here, so we're just simply going to close all. And since we're afraid of aircraft, we can also arm the slides already, so the emergency escape slides, we can just arm them. In a passenger airplane, that's something that the cabin crew will do, of course. But in this case, we do not have any cabin crew on board. So we'll just wait for the doors to close, and then we're going to arm them. Let's see if we get a clearance. If not, we might just try again, or if necessary, we can still ask via voice, of course. So let's see if we can get anything. So as you can see, it is quite a busy stage of the departure. You know, a lot of things happen at once, but you know, just keep the structure in there, and it will help you get on your way. Okay, a little trouble closing the doors there. They just open up out of the blue. Let's hope they close. I'm just gonna do them one by one right now. Hope that will do the trick. Yeah, that looks better, and then we can close this one. There we go. Stuff happens, guys. Like in the real world, every time there's usually something that breaks, and also in Flight Simulator there's usually something, you know, the previous flight everything was just fine, but then the next flight, as you want to record a video, something breaks. So let's see if it stays closed right now, but it looks like it is doing a better job right now. There we go. The doors are closed and we can just arm all the doors here for emergency escape. Perfect. Okay. Okay, so the ground crew is pretty much ready. They've checked everything around the aircraft. We just have to get our clearance. I'm just gonna try it one more time. If it doesn't work, we'll just ask via voice. Alright, it's sent again. Sometimes this network of CPDLC messages and ACARS requests gets a bit overloaded. That's my feeling. So let's see what we get. Alright guys, I've just been filling around with GSX. That also stopped working for some reason, or not working the way it should. So I'm just gonna get the pushback sequence ready. In the meantime, we also didn't get the clearance yet, so I'm just going to ask with ground right now. We're just gonna tune in 118805. Of course, in vPilot in the menu we can see which frequencies are being used. And I'll just ask him whether he has received our clearance request. And otherwise...
Hello, Captain. We are ready for pushback.
Okay, perfect. Otherwise we will just request the voice clearance. So the clearance you can always prepare, right? So you know what runway we can already expect. We actually already know what departure we can expect. And the only thing we don't really know is the squawk code. So we'll just hear from the controller. Alright, so let's ask.
Departure check completed. Bypass pin inserted.
Okay. Perfect. Riga ground, good evening, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Did you receive our clearance request?
Lufthansa 8147, negative.
Locking gear.
Roger, we'll try one more time, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Okay. Maybe it works now, you never know.
November 3680 Foxtrot, once you've done that startup approved, QNH 1049.
Just heard another clearance 1049 now, so back to 1049. So if you hear those kind of information, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, did you receive it now?
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, negative. I'm having problems with PDC, so if you like, I can do it by voice if that's okay.
Yeah, roger. In that case, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, we are at stand 502 777 freighter information alpha received, requesting the clearance to Frankfurt.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, information Bravo now current, you're cleared to Frankfurt, valid to Foxtrot departure, squawk 4174.
Clear to Frankfurt via valid to Foxtrot departure, squawking 4174 and monitoring information Bravo, Lufthansa Cargo 8147.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, read that correct?
Okay. So we received our clearance, squawk 4174, information Bravo. I'll just do a quick check on vPilot to see what it's like. Runway in use till 18. I think the pressure has changed a little bit. So we'll just leave the clearance via ACARS for what it is. But we have received the clearance right now. And after you've received the clearance, you can slowly start working on your briefing. Briefing is a nice way to just kind of get yourself familiar with the procedures, okay? So just take it, step by step, in a chronological order. We are parked here with a Boeing 777 freighter, a heavy aircraft, but not that heavy. We're still able to, let me just verify before I actually say that, the maximum landing weight 260. Yeah, we're taking off with less than maximum landing weight. So in case of a return, we can easily return. So what we'll do, we'll just start a pushback from stand 502, probably facing the west. From there on, normal engine start. Engine NTIs will not be necessary today because it's clear weather. We can start our taxi to, let me just unlock this, to Golf. Short taxi, Foxtrot Golf to runway 18 full length, and there we're going to fly the departure. The valid to Foxtrot departure. Always also make sure you of course cross-check in the background whether all the waypoints you have inserted are actually correct. So valid to Foxtrot, which means straight ahead, then a little right turn. As you can see, the first waypoint has a restriction, and we cross-check in the FMS in the background here that those restrictions are in there. There's some additional restrictions on the other waypoints as well, so Straight ahead, we'll climb to 4,000. That's the initial climb clearance. As you can see, 4,000 unless otherwise instructed by the tower. So that's good to go. And from there on we can continue our route after we get some more clearance for further climb. Okay, in real life we also of course brief something like engine failure procedures. In this case it would be something of the likes like maintaining runway heading or maybe heading northwards towards the sea. Depends a bit on the airline. I'm not going to go into that for this video, but it's something that we definitely brief. Other items that you of course want to brief, like the MSA, so the minimum sector altitude, 25 nautical mile ring around the airport, it's 2,300 feet. Quite some altitude restrictions on this SID, so really make sure you verify and cross-check those restrictions are in here. This part of the chart also contains a lot of information. As you can see, it says specifically stepped climb due to interaction with other routes. Pilot must ensure strict compliance with the specified in the SID climb profile unless published level restrictions are cancelled by ATC. Okay, let's see what else. Contact Riga approach at 129.925 unless otherwise assigned, not later than passing 1,500 feet after takeoff. So we will contact the approach controller ourselves. We will not get a handoff, which happens at some airports. At some airports you get a handoff, at other airports you don't. At first, contact aircraft shall report callsign, SID or radar heading given by ATC and clear the altitude level if it differs from SID initial climb clearance. Okay. Noise abatement, blah blah blah. Okay, good. Perfect. So that's basically what we're going to do. Just a quick briefing for yourself. It's always very nice, so you know actually what you're doing. You know, it's going to get busy later on, and by just building that mental picture in your head and by being aware of some of the restrictions, you know what to do, and hopefully you don't run into too much of a problem. Okay, so we have completed the briefing. Now this stage you would slowly start to receive a load sheet, and load sheet contains all the final figures for the aircraft's weight. Now I'm not simulating that here, but what we can do is we just record the weights on our flight plan as our final weights. So the zero fuel weights remains the same. Cruise center of gravity, I usually like to adjust that a little bit by taking the center of gravity that came up in the takeoff reference page, which is 26, and then changing that by -1, which results in a bit more accurate, more calculations. Okay, we have climb 2, that's perfect, that's okay. Okay, so because our weight hasn't changed, because we know that our takeoff weight is going to be what we calculated right here, we can safely use the calculations here. Okay, if you turn out to be heavier, much heavier, even with the 1,000 kilogram margin that we took, then you might want to consider, of course, new calculations. But in this case we can. So we have the V speeds. V1 is going to be 147. This is going to be the decision speed, where we abort takeoff or not. Rotate speed, where we're going to rotate, 148. And then here the V2, the safe climbing speed on one engine, 151. And 151 is also the speed we enter here, 151. We're going to fly the departure with LNAV and VNAV. Okay, LNAV, VNAV, and as you can see here on the mode annunciating panel, it's also armed here in white. Runway heading is set and initial altitude is set. Okay, that's perfect. So basically all the performance we have is now included for our departure, and it's nice to keep this page open on your pilot flying side, and then here you can keep, for example, the legs page open to make quick adjustments in your route when ATC, for example, gives you a direct. Okay. Alright, so let's get ready. So CDU pre-flight is done. The ground is done. If you have a 777 with passengers, you want to make sure that the cabin is ready, that the cabin is secure before you're going. All the doors are closed, and we were already cleared to pressurize. So what we're going to do is pressurize the airplane on 777. We first turn on right electric demand to auto, and then we turn on the rest of the hydraulics to auto. There we go. Seat belts, or supernumerary signs as they're called here. I'll just limit the dome light a little bit here. Okay. Let's use a storm light for now, because it's a bit better view. We're going to turn on the fuel pumps. We do not have fuel in the center tank, as you can see. It's completely empty. Beacon light, we can wait just a little bit. Let's do a little recall here, so we can see any ATIS messages that are popped up that we do not want to see. We'll open up the engine page and we will set the transponder to XPDR. Okay. Good. And now that the hydraulics are powered, also we can set the trim for takeoff. So as you can see, 4.5 units is what we want to set, and this is very important, of course, as you are flying the plane. You want to make sure that based on your takeoff calculations, you're setting the right trim value, so that when you rotate, you know, it takes off nicely and safely. Okay, that looks good. So all the doors are closed, cabin is ready, well, the freight is ready, ground is ready. We've done our kind of, you know, before engine start flow, so we can do the before start checklist. Click on the engine or the checklist button again. Before start checklist, the MCP, we have the V2-151, heading is 175, runway heading, and altitude as per the chart, initial climb clearance 4000. The takeoff speeds V1-147, rotate 148, V2-151. CDO pre-flight completed, so everything that we've entered in here is completed and ready to go. The trim, as set, 4.5 units, and you also want to make sure you check the other trims. The rudder trim is set to 0, and the aileron trim is set to 0. There we go. Taxi and takeoff briefing is completed, and the beacon light, well, we're gonna soon start up, or request a startup, so we can turn the beacon light on. Completes the before start checklist. Okay, perfect. So just gonna get the GSX ready. We're gonna be not requiring the icing today, and we're gonna be facing west.
Release parking brakes.
And as you can hear, they are ready to go until release parking brake. So we've run through the checklist, so we are also going to request right now. Let me dim the light here a little bit, and then we're gonna request slowly the pushback from the ground controller. So yeah, as you can see, quite a hectic phase, right? A lot of things to think about, but if you just take it step by step, take it easy, not in a rush. We're a little bit behind schedule even because of the GSX issues, but that's very normal. That happens in real life as well. Lufthansa Cargo 8147, stand 502, ready for push and start.
Lufthansa 8147, push and start approved, QNH 1050.
Push and start approved, QNH 1050, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Okay, that's changed again. Okay, so we're gonna release the parking brakes. Let me just open up the engine page for engine start.
Commencing push. All engines clear. Start at wheel.
Okay, ground. The pushback truck already said that we are cleared to start engines. Usually in real life it takes a little bit longer. You want to be a bit away from the platform and any objects. So just wait a little bit. If you're flying the passenger version, this would be the moment where the slides are armed. But in this case they are armed already. You can see it says doors auto, so that's good to go. And then we're pushing back slowly. Looking good. Alright, so let's start the right engine first. We'll start right engine.
For about 1 minute we've got aircraft taxiing off system.
Just enjoy the engine sounds. Fuel control switch to run. And on an aircraft like the 777, it's taking care of everything automatically pretty much. Oil pressure is rising. Perfect. Nice. Spooling up nicely.
Emirates Cargo 160 request.
Oh, and the gauge is normal. engine is successfully started. Then we're going to start the
Set
left
parking
engine.
brakes.
Start through QNH 1050.
Okay, ground crew requests to set parking brakes. Just verify that we are not moving. And we can set the parking brake.
With a 6 Bravo
There we
unit
go. So they can start removing the pushback truck.
Foxtrot Golf, holding
Parking brake is set. He's clear to disconnect.
Sure, Golf, holding point runway 18, with their 6 Bravo uniform, and we can take Echo if available.
If you prefer Echo, then you can take Echo.
Yeah, we'll take Echo with their 6 Bravo uniform.
Unlocking gear.
Okay, the gear is being unlocked, so they're removing the bypass pin and the truck. Perfect.
Lufthansa 893, request taxi.
And we have 2
Lufthansa
successful
893
engine starts.
For now, taxi Foxtrot, hold
There we
your
go.
Tow truck disconnected. Bypass pin removed.
Alright, that's perfect. We'll probably
Left is clear. Right is clear.
see the truck appearing or with the bypass pin in a moment. Quick glance on the overhead panel. Everything is looking okay. The generators have taken over. We can turn the APU off. Packs usually take a little while. This would be the point where you would turn on the engine anti-ice if there would be, icy conditions. But there's no visible moisture, as I said before, so that's okay. We can just leave it at this. This stage, we'll just wait for the pushback truck. And just wait for the clear signal. And we want to verify that we have the bypass pin there. And as you can see, the bypass pin is shown. So we can safely steer with the nose gear. It's not being locked out. Perfect. We'll give it a little wave. Okay. So now we know that everything around the aircraft is clear. We can start moving things. So we'll go flaps 5 for takeoff. We'll set that. And then we're gonna do the flight control check. Now, real life, this is done, just to check the freedom of movement of the controls. Make sure they center nicely. Make sure no any ICAS warnings are popping up, things like that. But within the flight simulator sphere, it's also nice to check, make sure that everything is programmed properly, so that you have not, switched your ailerons on the wrong way around or things like that. So rudder also checked, and then that's good to go. Okay, that's all set. So we can do the before taxi checklist. We'll do a little recall. TCAS off is what we expect. We've turned the transponder to XPDR without any of the TCAS functions yet. We're going to do that when we line up. This prevents any nuisance warnings to others and to ourselves. So before taxi checklist, anti-ice auto. Recall was checked. We just did that. The flight controls are checked and the ground equipment is clear before taxi checklist completed. Okay. So let's get ready to move. We'll contact ground again. Looks like tower is online as well. And what I usually like to do, I'm using a little app to tune frequencies, by the way. I will put a link in the description and maybe explain a little bit later. It's very nice to be able to pre-tune frequencies so we can easily switch. So later we're going to be switching to Riga Tower, which is 118 and 105. And then Riga approach is 129925. So just having some frequencies here that you can easily switch to will make your life a lot easier. Okay, so here we go. Perfect. So okay, let's request taxi. Lufthansa Cargo 8147, request taxi.
Small 105, bye bye.
Whoopsie. Just give it some time. When it happens, you transmit over someone. In this case, I noticed I'm transmitting over the controller. We were both transmitting at the same time. Just gonna give the controller some time. There we go. Don't just jump on people all the time. And when you notice that the air traffic controller was making a transmission, just let him, make that transmission. Just wait a bit. Now it's safe. Lufthansa Cargo 8147, request taxi.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, taxi Foxtrot Golf, holding point runway 18.
Taxi Foxtrot Golf holding point runway 18 Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Okay, so we can release the parking brakes. We've turned on the taxi lights. There we go. And the left is clear and the right is clear. There's no objects that are hindering us, so we can slowly start to move. The aircraft is relatively light for being in 777, so we're not going to use or need much takeoff or thrust to get moving. So take it easy, make sure you know where you're taxiing. In this case, it's a very simple taxi route, as you can see. We're going to turn right in a moment to Foxtrot. Now, if you have a passenger aircraft, the cabin would report ready, the cabin ready chime would show up, and then you let the cabin crew take their seats. In this case, we have a freighter, we just have cargo, which is very simple. But this stage is really usually nice to kind of do a little recap of your departure and engine failure procedure, if you've briefed that. So what we can say, well, we have a departure, we're going to initial climb to 4,000 feet. Very busy right now.
Actually, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, continue taxi.
Oh, roger, continue taxi, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. I missed that, but so a little recap, so we can say, okay, initial climb to 4,000. Bit straight ahead and a right turn, following the SID restrictions, and at 1,500 feet, we're going to switch to a Riga approach on 129925, okay? So just a little recap, you know, especially if you have a long taxi route, then it's nice to have that recap available after your briefing. Okay, so everything is ready. We just need to do the before takeoff checklist, so we can do that. Before takeoff checklist completed. As you can see, it's already ticked off for flaps 5 departure. Okay, perfect. So we are approaching runway 18 at the beginning. That's what we've calculated for. Always verify which intersection you're actually departing from. So we should get a hand off the tower. Just take it easy. Especially short taxi routes, we really don't need to rush. But let's see.
Lufthansa 54 Charlie, stand by. Lufthansa Cargo 8147, contact tower 118.105, bye.
118.105, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, bye bye. Okay, switch to tower. In the meantime, I will also put in the next frequency 129. Let's see, because I'm going to be switching to that quite quickly, so I just want to make sure I have that set. Okay, Riga Tower, good evening, Lufthansa Cargo 8147 Heavy, holding port runway 18, ready for departure.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, thank you. Surface wind is 100 degrees 5 knots, runway 18, clear takeoff, bye bye.
Runway 18 clear for takeoff, Lufthansa Cargo 8147 Heavy, bye bye. Okay, runway 18 is identified, full length. So what we're going to do now is turn on the strobe lights and switch to TARA on the transponder, so we have TCAS functions available. Oh, it's always difficult to taxi and do things at the same time. Hope we didn't hit any taxi lights. We are cleared for takeoff, so we can turn on the landing lights. That's a nice indication that you're cleared for takeoff. If you want to use any of the other lights, you know, feel free to use them. And there we go. So we're going to line up. We'll review the departure sequence a little bit later on, but here we go, guys. So what we're going to do is advance the thrust levers to 55% and 1. We start the clock. We are cleared, checked, and take off. And then we're going to hit the toggle button momentarily. And just looking stable. And thrust rev. Bit of forward pressure, and thrust is set. 80 knots. V1 rotates. Pause the freight, gear up. Okay, there we go. And we have LNAV, so we have lateral navigation right now. As you can see, very important to keep an eye on this thrust to VNAV speed. So we're following the lateral calculated path and the vertical path, and the engines are just setting, in this case right now, the climb thrust. So we are slowly going to accelerate and retract the flaps. There we go. Just take it easy. Go to flaps 1. And as we are passing 1500, we will switch to approach. There we go. Riga approach, good evening. Lufthansa cargo 8147 on a Violet to Foxtrot departure, passing 2200.
Lufthansa cargo 8147, Riga approach, low radar contact, climb to flight level 380.
Climb to flight level 380, Lufthansa cargo 8147. 380. There we go. And we're going to start the turn. As you can see here, we're passing the waypoint with our speed restriction. It's always a bit difficult when you're multitasking to keep such speeds, but don't worry. Of course, you can always turn on the autopilot to. But as you can see, we leave the flaps out a little bit before accelerating further now. As we're accelerating further now, we can retract the flaps fully. So flaps are up.
British 1775, speed 180 knots or greater.
Okay, so ATC cleared us already to the next altitude, so that's nice. Let's take a look at the legs page here. With that, we should also be able to make all the restrictions. So make sure you align the heading bug. That's always nice when you are, you know, getting a vector suddenly. You at least have the heading bug close to you. We've passed the transition altitude, so we can set standards. You can see a big difference right here. Standard set. And this one as well. And it's climbing nicely. We can do the after takeoff checklist. After takeoff checklist. After takeoff checklist completed. Very easy. It's already checked off. Okay, so there we go. Let's see if we can enjoy some of the beautiful views here. Yeah, very nice. Not much time. So below 10,000 feet, you usually want to maintain 250 knots maximum. So that's what we're aiming for right here as well. And as you can see, as we're flying a big aircraft, it has a tendency to really skyrocket, you know. So be aware of that when you are doing a short flight with a big aircraft like this, that it's really going to fly quite fast. Of course, that's something that you also could include in your briefing. Nice view here. As we are making some slight turns. As you can see, the additional restrictions are no problem anymore. If you should, you know, encounter a situation where you cannot meet the restriction, for example, you might be climbing too slowly and you might not meet the restriction, ATC will usually see it, but you can also, of course, notify ATC of such situation. Okay, just let them know, hey, I cannot make that restriction, or maybe on your approach, and they can actually do something about it. Okay, we passed 10,000 feet. Now, this is the moment, as you can see, where the aircraft is going to accelerate further, and I'm just going to turn on the autopilot right now. Autopilot. See, autopilot is now in control.
Can you speed?
That's perfect. 10,000 feet. So also a moment to turn off some of the lights here. Logo lights not necessary really. And again, the seatbelts are set to auto, so it should have to turn off itself at 10,000 feet.
And Lufthansa cargo 8147 for speed traffic at
let's see. Direct to ADDONS, Lufthansa cargo 8147. Direct ADDONS, so just verify before you do that to see if it kind of makes sense. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, we're gonna hit execute. There we go. So as you can see, we've received a direct right now. Also removing any of the restrictions that we had previously had. So the aircraft is now just climbing nicely with a nice direct. In the meantime, we have a quick glance over on the VATSIM radar. So as you can see, here we are right now. The green little aircraft. And let's see which ATC stations we're gonna contact. But it's getting very busy. Okay, so now we're on the way. As you can see, small airport, but still very busy on the frequency. So, you know, on Friday night, Saturday night, usually one of the prime times on VATSIM. So as you can see on the navigation display, we have our top of climb. That's basically when we reach our top of climb. So our cruising level that we have requested in our flight plan and have also entered in the flight management system. So the aircraft calculates where approximately we are going to be reaching that cruising level. Okay. So yeah, that's nice. You know, it doesn't hurt to always have a quick view of the overhead panel every now and then. You know, especially around 10,000 feet. You want to make sure the packs are working and you did not forget to turn off the APU, things like that. But everything is looking okay. That's beautiful. So that doesn't seem to be a problem. So we can safely climb to our cruise level, flight level 380. Let's have some wing views here. Nice and dark, as you can see. But the sky is absolutely clear, no weather here, no issue. So that's perfect. And of course we can also take a look where we are on the Navigraph here. Navigraph of course containing our original flight plan still, so we can kind of have a view where we are in relation to our original route. Again, to ADDONS. So usually a direct like this, like we just got, is something that you can expect, you know, towards the end, the boundary of a ATC sector, so in this case also to the boundary of Riga control. So yeah, that's always nice. So you can kind of expect what direct routing you're gonna get. And from there we'll continue our route southwestwards to Frankfurt.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, contact Riga control 135, decimal 1, goodbye.
135 decimal 1, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, good night. 1351. There we go, we'll switch to Riga control. And when you contact a you know, bigger controller like this, you usually just want to report the altitude that you're passing and climbing to, and you can of course also include that we are proceeding direct to ADDONS. Riga control, very good evening. Lufthansa Cargo 8147, passing flight of 265 for flight of 380 direct ADDONS.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, Riga control, Latvaca, radar contact.
Alright, perfect. So we have radar contact and we're good to go. So quick glance at the progress page here. Arrival time at Frankfurt would now be 19:28 Zulu. However, I do expect a little bit later because we still have to enter an arrival route. But it gives you a bit of an idea. On longer flights you would also definitely do timekeeping and fuel status keeping. I usually don't really do that on my flights and, you know, short flights, but if you're doing a long haul flight, it's very nice, you know, to look at your flight plan, see how much fuel you've burned. You know, that's why you can kind of keep track of what the aircraft is doing, making sure you do not burn more fuel than the flight plan has calculated for some reason. So do give that some consideration. Alright, so as we are climbing along, let's do a little bit of a recap of our departure that we just did. You know, again, just take it step by step. It's very busy on the ground, but once you're in air, you know, you can kind of relax. But on the ground, it's usually the most busy. So takeoff, you know, line up first. We turned on our strobe lights, the TCAS to TARA to have TCAS available. And we line up on the runway, and we got our clearance. Upon our clearance, we turned on the landing lights, and then we took off. You always, you know, on bigger jets, you know, advanced throttles to like 40, or in this case on the triple, 55% N1 right here, you know, which is a bit of an approximation, of course. But to spool up the engines, to make sure they're stable, nothing weird shows up. And when it's stable, we can hit the TOGA button. The TOGA button is can be found at the fingertips when you touch the throttle in any Boeing aircraft. It might be a little bit different position for other aircraft types. But by hitting the toga switch, the auto throttle system will set takeoff thrust, okay? And that's why I set thrust ref indicating that the aircraft is setting takeoff thrust. It does that automatically, and it does that, precisely. If you would do that manually, it's it's a bit fiddling. Of course, it can be done, but it would be a little bit fiddling around to setting the exact takeoff thrust. Okay, but that's set, and then you just roll out. You wait. Usually, have a call out like 80 knots, or maybe on the Airbus, I think it's 100 knots. Kind of on a speed where you really stop. Abort the takeoff for everything. Beyond that speed, you only abort for more serious conditions like engine fire, failure, things like that. So V1, that's where we took our hands off the throttle. That's just something that you can simulate at home, of course. Take your hand off the throttle at V1. We do not abort the takeoff anymore. It's a stop. It's a go or no-go decision point. So yeah, that's where we just went on, and then we slowly rotated the aircraft, and then basically, following the flight director soon thereafter to follow the climb profile of the aircraft. And as you can see, it did that very nicely. So yeah, that's a bit of an overview. Then after that, we slowly accelerated, of course, minding the restriction of 210 knots at that first waypoint. Again, if you have certain speed restrictions on waypoints, you might want to, keep the flaps out a little bit longer. Don't retract them too early, okay? Because you might you might be flying below the flap maneuvering speeds of your aircraft. So be on the safe side and then delay the flap retraction a little bit in those low-speed turns. Okay. So that's basically what we did. One thing I forgot to set before was terrain display and weather radar. I don't really use it in the sim, the weather radar. It's not very good, but of course for situational awareness, especially in areas where it's very important, having the terrain display will give you a bit of more awareness of the terrain around you in mountainous areas, definitely. So yeah, make sure that you give that some consideration. Alright, perfect. And other than that, we're happily cruising along. Okay, we're leveling off. Speed VNAV path, as you can see. Again, some mode enunciations that have changed. So now the aircraft is managing the speed. Instead of setting a fixed thrust ref, it has now changed to speed mode. So just trying to maintain the speed we have set here. Lateral navigation still is active, and VNAV path. So it's calculating a certain path for us, and then it's just keeping it at altitude. So that's what we want to see here. So that's perfectly okay. Yeah, so perfect. So now we've reached cruise level, we can have a little look at the fuel situation. If you would have any center tank fuel, you would get an ICAS message if you would have to turn it off, but it's looking okay. So just a bit of review of all the systems. Make sure everything in the cabin is okay, or on the cargo deck. So that's all working perfectly. What we can do now is, usually around the top of climb, we're gonna select a arrival route for Frankfurt. Now we've already prepared that. I expect the ILS Yankee runway 07 left. Let's see, let me just get the chart here. The Kirox for Charlie arrival, or correction 5 Delta, and then we have a transition via Delta Foxtrot 454. Now again, as I said on departure, these are things that you can kind of anticipate, right? You do not have to wait for the last moment to plan your arrival or anticipate your arrival. You can kind of see, on websites like Flight Radar 24, if there are, in what directions the aircraft in the real world are landing. In this case, I already looked, they are landing on the 07 runway, so in a northeasterly direction. So that's a nice way of just assessing what runway is our use.
You are not allowed to leave the cockpit without permission, and you need to monitor the frequency at all times, please. Okay?
Also that.
Switch
also
to
that.
Tallinn 134 decimal 325.
He's going away quickly, I think. So as you can see, the arrival time, I've now loaded in the arrival routes. You might need to adjust some things here. As you do that, after loading it in, make sure you connect all the waypoints, especially after your last waypoint. Our arrival time is shifted a little bit towards 1937 Zulu, which is not that weird. The arrival route at Frankfurt is of course a little bit long, so I do expect an arrival time like this would be quite realistic. But of course also for your fuel figure, I want to keep an eye on that, okay? As you can see, the final reserve, or the reserve FMC reserve fuel before we start thinking about diverting to our alternate of Cologne is only 6.4. And we are arriving with 13.2, so we do have quite a lot of fuel on board, about an hour of fuel worth to play around if necessary. But who knows, it might get busy, so you always want to prepare for that, as I said during the flight plan. Alright, so we're happily cruising along. We are reaching the boundary here of Riga airspace. We also have some traffic right here. If you're at cruise altitude, you know, in case of emergency descent, for example, it's quite nice to put this transponder on below. Let's see where it is, the button here on below, also on this side, so we have a better view of the traffic that's below the aircraft. But yeah, again, we're reaching ADDONS, and you know, this is a nice point where you can kind of anticipate, okay, what's going to be the next frequency. Well, if we look at ADDONS, we look on the map, you can also use the VATSIM radar for this. It has quite a nice overview of all the different airspaces. As you can see, we're going to be crossing just a little bit of a point of Vilnius airspace before we enter even Swedish airspace a little bit, and then German airspace. So I always kind of have a look at the frequency list. You know, what frequencies can I expect? So maybe 1351 might be next. That could be the case. Or maybe something else, but we can keep an eye on it. Additionally, of course, I'm not sure if it's working today, but controllers like this might have CPDLC available. So you can again right-click on the controller, request controller info, and they will usually have some CPDLC logon code. In this case, well, we're only in this airport for a short amount of time, so it doesn't really make sense to log on anymore, but you could of course do that maybe for other airspaces we will. So you would go to the com page, and then here to ATC, and then a log on, and then here we would enter the logon code, which usually again is in the controller information on vPilot. Okay, so you can enter the code that's necessary to have CPDLC contact. So yeah, this is where you can do that, so be aware of that. It's of course something that's relatively new to the VATSIM network, so it's not always the fastest system, but and sometimes it just stops working, but so far so good. So yeah, let's wait and see what next frequency we'll get from the Riga control.
Chicago 8147, Sweden, offline again, UNICOM 122.8 for an avond to
UNICOM 122.8, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, tot ziens. Okay, so we're gonna go to UNICOM. UNICOM 122.8, the basic frequency, you know, to have pilot-to-pilot, you know, sharing of intentions basically. So it's a VATSIM thing. It's of course in the real life not something we really use, because all the airspace is basically controlled in this type of flying. But you know, it's a nice way of you know, mentioning what you're doing, you know, around airports. At cruise level, it's not really used, but you can just talk on a frequency. I believe it's like a 15 nautical mile range of the voice, how far your voice can reach. But if you're approaching the terminal area of an airport, you know, as you're doing the approach, you can definitely let other people around you know what you're doing. I think I made a whole video on that before, but yeah, it's nice to be able to let others be aware of your existence, and you know, especially when you're landing, when you're on final, you know, just announce, hey, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, final runway 36 for landing, you know. Then if the airport's uncontrolled, if there's no ATC, then other people using that airport will know that they cannot line up on the runway. They just have to wait a little bit for you to land, okay? So yeah, 1 to 28. Another thing I wanted to mention. So again, it's very important to have, you know, kind of like the ease of life regarding your flight simming. So what I have here is a little app. Maybe show it here a little bit, which is available on flightsim.to. I will link it in the description. It basically allows you to open up a browser on your phone or iPad, for example, to control your radios, and this is very convenient. You know, you can just open your browser on your phone, go to your local IP address, and then download the little utility on flightsim.to to connect your radios, and then via your local network you can control the radios of your airplane, and that's really nice. I've used something similar all my life in flight sim. It just makes it so much easier. You know, otherwise you're just down here all the time fiddling with the little buttons and trying to get the frequency right. But in this case, you can just, you know, with a, you know, one eye here and one eye there, you kind of sort of type in frequencies or you know, dial in frequencies a lot easier, and also pre-dial them so that you can easily switch later on. So give that some consideration. You know, your home cockpit setup. Try to make it easy. Now this one is relatively advanced with the yoke, throttle, rudder pedal, and MCP. MCP definitely makes life a lot easier, I can tell you. I know there are a lot of products out there these days that do similar jobs, so, you know, also mini versions and things like that. But it just makes it so much easier, guys. So yeah, if you want to expand on the hobby, maybe that might be worth looking into someday. But yeah, just having that, having your push-to-talk keys set up properly. You know, I have one here on the yoke, but I also have one here on this joystick on my left. Maybe you can see it right here. So that when I'm using the tiller on the ground, I can also press a button to talk to air traffic control. Because let's face it, you're flying a multi-pilot airplane, multi-pilot airliner jet on your own in a very busy airspace, in a very busy environment, and that should not be, you know, you should not underestimate that. So making your life easier by having, you know, your buttons set up properly and ease of access, and having your charts, for example, on an iPad or a second screen or maybe a separate laptop or something like that, is just going to make your life easier. So yeah, make sure you give that some consideration. Alright, so here's a bit of an overview of the airspace in Europe. As you can see, it's nice and busy as we are making our turn towards Polish airspace right now. Seems like there's a sort of little bit of a sunset going on still. But anyway, as you can see, nice and busy. It's always nice to fly around at these kind of events. It's very busy, you know, sometimes a bit too busy in my opinion, too busy for what is, I would consider, realistic for certain airports. But you know, I know the controllers try the best of their job. You know, they are very good at managing all the traffic. But yeah, of course, as pilots, you also have the responsibility to kind of know what you're doing. And I hope a video like this will help people out there to, you know, just making sure that you kind of have an idea of how it works, but also to show you it's not easy. You know, it takes practice to get into this, into the VATSIM flying. I would definitely not recommend doing a flight like this when it's very busy, when you're only just started. But you'll get the hang of it. Just practice a lot, practice offline as well. Just get to know your airplane. That's so important, guys. If you do not know what your airplane is doing, it's going to be very hard work, right? If you know what your airplane is doing and it gets busy, you can easily turn on the autopilot and just let it do its thing. But if you do not know the systems properly, the flight management system, if you do not know how to manipulate that, if you kind of struggle with the energy management, then it's gonna, you know, make your life difficult. So it's also, you know, I think a polite thing to do towards controllers that are working so hard to manage all the traffic on the VATSIM network, to, you know, put your effort into kind of, you know, training yourself the best way possible. and of course there's a lot of information out there, but in the end, you know, you can watch as many videos as you want and read as many tutorials as you want, but in the end it's down to you. You have to do it, of course. So yeah, keep practicing. It's great fun. So I'm sure if you are still struggling with VATSIM, you will definitely enjoy it later on as you get some practice. And you know, there are plenty of areas on the VATSIM network which you can fly in, you know, which are not that busy, which you can just enjoy more easily. So give that some consideration. Alright, just taking a quick look at the cargo here. Looks like everything is still in order. That's good. So perfect. Maybe you want to make yourself some coffee. It's always good. But this is always the best place to be. In the cockpit, the best view, the best office. Isn't that beautiful? And I can definitely tell, very true to real life, guys. This whole simulation with the PMDG 777 Microsoft Flight Simulator, especially with FS 2024, once the dust kind of settles around that release, then it will definitely be a very, very good sim. So enjoy it, guys. It's really one of the best times to be alive regarding flight simulation. Really, it's important to appreciate what we have here. So anyway, let's get back into the captain's seat here. It's now 18:26. We've been on the way for 40 minutes, and as you can see, our arrival time is 19:37, which means we have about 1 more hour to go. Yeah, more than 40 minutes to our top of descent. But you know, this is a very nice flight, nice amount of cruise time, especially a nice stage right now. Now we're in a zone without ATC to kind of look at the arrival already. And if you're new to airports like Frankfurt, it's very important to prepare well. Okay, so how can you prepare for your arrival? How can you try to make it as smooth as possible? There are multiple things that you can do. Of course, it's very important to have the charts at the ready. Having a Navigraph subscription is the best way, but there are of course also free resources out there where you can get charts beforehand, like the official AIP, official charts, things like that. But having something of charts is very important, so you have a nice view of what you're actually going to be doing, together with you know, preferably the latest AirLock data through Navigraph subscription, for example. Then you have all the procedures in there which are correct according to the charts. Of course, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 also comes with free LiDO charts, so that's also something that you can use. So that is important. What you can also do is look at the VATSIM Germany website and other local division websites. They usually have some sort of briefing about the airports in their country, you know, especially more complex airports, you know, for example Innsbruck in Austria, but also a lot of airports in Germany have a special briefing package where you can read more information about the flights, about what you should do before flying in or out of those airports. So for example, as you can see, Frankfurt has some nice information page regarding what you can expect regarding star selection, regarding runway assignment, what you have to do on the ground, things you shouldn't do. So make sure you give that a good read through, especially if you're new to such airport. And remember, it's a busy airport, it's a busy event, Friday night, a lot of traffic coming in. You do not want to be the one that keeps things up and doesn't understand what the controller is saying. Okay, so by reading that briefing beforehand, you know, before the flight, before you start your flight sim, you know, as you're planning your flight, just give it a good look. Okay, this contains some very useful information. Of course, you can also use some of the documentation in the section right here on Navigraph. You know, it usually comes with some information about the speeds that you should keep, other flight procedures, what you should do when you vacate the runway, things like that. A lot of useful information, so you can just read through some of the stuff right here. At airports, you know, the speed restrictions, you know, differ a little bit. Sometimes you're more left alone, you can just do your own thing, or maybe sometimes there's a star with very specific speed restrictions. But at other airports, I think Frankfurt as well, the ATC takes care of a lot of the speed restrictions. So let's just take a look. Yeah, we have the charts here, so we can already kind of take a look at our arrival and just make sure and cross-check that we have everything in there. So I'm just going to go to the CDU right here and go to the legs page. Kerax is where we're going to end up, and as told in the making of the flight plan, we already have the Kerax 5 Delta because we expect runway 07 left later on. So I'm just going to cross-check all the waypoints that we have here. Okay, make sure it's correct. Make sure any restrictions regarding the waypoints are in there. As you can see, this leads to a very nice and smooth approach. Let's see. Yeah, 441. And there's a vector. You could potentially connect these vectors if you want. So if I go to the plan view, as you can see, the aircraft draws a straight line after Delta Foxtrot 444, which is correct according to the chart. Because ATC might just leave you on that downwind leg a little bit longer and then give you a left turn. It depends a bit on how familiar you are with the airport. You know, if you are flying a lot into this airport and always you get, you know, after Delta Foxtrot 444, you get a left turn. You can connect these two, but always be aware that, you know, ATC expects you to actually keep flying. So if you do that, be aware and brief with yourself. Okay, we've connected those waypoints, but just in case, you know, ATC doesn't say anything, then we actually have to keep flying. Okay, but by connecting waypoints, you know, on a long procedure or by shortening a procedure, you can kind of have a bit of a, you know, accurate estimation of your arrival time and arrival fuel. In this case, I'm just going to leave it in. We have plenty of fuel to go with today, and I'm not sure how busy it gets here on the Friday night, so I will just leave it in. Then we check the other waypoints. So I've picked ILS Yankee from the briefing. That's what I believe was the approach that is most commonly given. So let's take a look. ILS Yankee 07 left. From Delta Foxtrot 454, 453, 70, and then we pick up the glide slope, which is a bit steeper than usual. So yeah, that's okay. Perfect. Okay, so all the waypoints are checked. So just a quick examination of the route that we have. And of course you can use the step function right here. So if you go here to, instead of map view, which we are normally in, as you can see right here, you can go to plan view, and then if you go to the legs page, you can scroll through the different pages and you can scroll through the different waypoints. So this gives you a very nice view of the route that you've planned in. And as you can see here, all the different Delta Foxtrot waypoints, and then the arrival itself, and also the go around procedure. So these are things you can check well beforehand. Cross-check it with your chart. Make sure all the restrictions are in there, and make sure that the information is correct. Okay, so yeah, that's one way to do that. Okay, perfect. So that's a quick look at the arrival. Of course, you're going to do a proper arrival briefing later on, but for now we've, you know, at least checked the route. Of course, it can all change based on runway assignment and things like that, but in a few minutes we'll get an ATIS from Frankfurt, and then we can know the latest information regarding the arrivals. Alright, something else I'm doing right now is just pinning all the charts that I expect to need. So the ILS star chart, you know, I can use that to make sure that everything is available whenever I click on it. So I'm not searching for charts, things like that. The airport map, perfect. As we are still happily cruising along, guys. Few clouds down there, not much. But beautiful as ever. Alright, so let's take a look at our progress page. On the progress page you can always see the arrival information, the time and the fuel, and our time to the top of the descent. So as you can see, we have about half an hour to our top of the descent, so it's slowly time to sort of start preparing for our arrival into Frankfurt. Okay, now there's always a couple of things that you need to do. First of course, we want to know some information about the airport. So for that, of course, we're gonna again use ACARS to get some information for our flights about the airport. So let's do Frankfurt. I think it should be online by now. Let me just check in vPilot if it makes sense to do that, or maybe on the VATSIM radar. If there's no ATIS online, official ATIS online yet, then it doesn't really make sense. But it looks like it is, so there we go. Maybe a bit early, you know, it's probably going to change a little bit once we get closer, but at least it gives us already a bit of a heads up about, you know, the runway is in use. Maybe we have a totally different runway in use. Maybe the winds have shifted. Yeah, then we at least know about it. So there we go. Let's just wait for that first. There we go. Here comes the ATIS. So let's take a look. We have Frankfurt arrival information, Foxtrot, meteorological report at time 1820, so that's 20 minutes ago. Expect dependent parallel ILS Yankee approach runway 07 left or ILS approach runway 07 right. Runways in use 07 right and 07 left. Perfect, that's what we also briefed. Expect radar vectoring, okay. So probably at some point, you know, we're going to follow the star, but at some point ATC will just give us heading and speed instructions to capture the ILS. GLS approach on request, that's not applicable to us. Transition level 60. On departure we pass the transition altitude, which in Europe, you know, depends on the country and the airport. It's just on the charts. In US that's 18,000 feet, and here it was 4,000 feet, and that's why we switched from the local QNH setting to the standard QNH setting of 1013. As you can see, it's set to standard right now. This is the altitude airliners fly at using the standard barometric pressure. But once you get closer to an airport, you want to set the altimeter according to the local pressure that is happening right there. Otherwise, you get you know, weird readings. You basically want to, as you land, what you want to read on your altimeter is the elevation of the airport. So it's very important to set that. And today we have quite high pressure, so it's definitely important to set that right now. So transition level 60, it's the flight level as we come in, where we're going to change to the local QNH. So what we can do here is click on VNAV and then go to the next page, which is the descent page. Here we have some information already entered regarding our descent. As you can see, we're going to be flying with a relatively low speed today for our arrival, with Mach decimal 82 and 253 knots, because we're flying with a low cost index, but that's not a problem. You don't want to fly too fast if you're new to VATSIM anyway. But we can click here on forecast, and then here we can adjust the transition level. In this case it's already in, and we can also load the winds for the descent. So by loading the winds for the descent, we get a bit more accurate approximation of our arrival route, which especially helps with, you know, the vertical navigation profile. The more information this little machine has to calculate the vertical path, the better your approach management will be regarding speed and altitude. So make sure you give it all it needs. So that's all loaded in, transition level 60. The wind is currently 050 degrees 11 knots, so, you know, try to visualize that information. You know, okay, we're landing at runway 07, so the wind's going to be from 050. So we do expect a little bit crosswind from the left. So our nose is going to be pointed a little bit to the left, so we're going to have to use a right rudder and then a bit of left aileron to land the airplane. You know, you can already, you know, build that mental picture. Temperature is 3, dew point -2, QNH 1023. Well, definitely not as high as in Riga, but let's see. We'll just set that right here. But important to set that correctly, because I'll also do that right here. Otherwise we'll be flying at incorrect altitudes, of course. So there we go. Okay, what else do we have? Trend no 6, so that kind of says, you know, in the upcoming time there's no significant change to the weather. For the information, Foxtrot out. Okay, so pretty much what we expect. Not too difficult weather, just a little bit of crosswind, but that's about it. So we now have a bit of an overview of the situation at the airport and what the runways we can expect. Now we already loaded the arrival route as I did before. You now go to departure arrival, index, and then here on route 1 can change the arrival. I already selected ILS Yankee 07 left, and I've selected the star according to the chart, so that's the arrival route that's going to take us into the airport area. And then I've also selected transition, so it's usually the transition, which you can see. Well, I just selected once more. Transition here is usually, you know, the waypoint that transitions you onto the final approach, or sometimes, you know, from the start to the initial approach. So just give a good review of the chart. Usually makes sense, as you saw before. You know, Delta Foxtrot 454 is the point of the ILS. We just should view it here. There we go. So it's the point where the ILS kind of begins the initial approach fix, and then from there on we continue the approach route. So it makes sense to select this one. You know, if you get all kinds of weird lines, then you're probably doing something wrong, or you should try to fix something. But as you can see, this makes logical sense. So it's already loaded, and we've checked all the waypoints. We've checked the altitude restrictions, so that's perfect. So that's done. On some aircraft, of course, you have to tune the ILS. So make sure that you let me just get rid of this message right here. Tune the ILS if necessary on the Boeing 777, and that's done automatically. Other than that, what we also want to do is, of course, do some performance calculations. Now, we do select landing en route. Landing dispatch is something you do before the flight, as the flight is in the dispatch phase. But you can do a landing en route calculation, so based on current conditions. So we have runway 07 left. It's dry. That's good. We can just do it a little bit simply right now. Of course, you can, if you want to have a bit more accurate calculation, you can see, okay, let's say we burn another 3 tons. So let's say our weight at landing will be 217.2 with a bit of margin, of course. So these are the approach speed that it gives, but we can, of course, also enter that here. There we go. Let's do a flaps 30 landing, air conditioning on. Yeah, anti-ice will be on auto. Reverser, if it's all operational, you might use them or not. Auto brakes, probably use 2. We can just let it roll out as much as possible, because as you can see on the runway, we want to vacate as far as possible, because we're basically going to heading for the Papa taxiway anyway. So auto brake 2 should suffice. How do you say that? Any non-normal condition, and we usually add 5 knots to the approach speed if we're using the auto throttle system for landing. If you are using on the 777 specifically manual thrust, then you have to add a little bit more depending on the wind conditions. Won't go into much detail, but you always have an approach speed that's calculated, and then there's always at least 5 knots or more correction on that depending on the wind. You can import the weather, just a quick and dirty calculation. You can kind of see where we end up. See, so with auto brake 2 we are ending nicely, you know, about a little bit beyond 3/4 of the runway, so I think that's sufficient. So we can select the speed here. That's an important thing to do. Approach speed, flaps 30, 137. So our final approach speed with that 5 knots is going to be 142, and that's also exactly what the performance calculation has shown us also. So that is set. Okay, perfect. Then some other things that we have to set is the minima for the approach. For this you have to look at the ILS chart. Now the ILS chart can be quite confusing. Yeah, a lot of information. Yeah, depends a bit on which resource you use. If you're using the Jeppesen charts, you might be used to something. If you use the Lido charts, you might be used to something. So give that a good review. So I just had a quick look at which approach category the 777 freighter exactly is, which is C. You know, depending on the speed of the airplane, you have a different minima. Okay. resulting in a different decision altitude at which you're going to decide whether to continue to landing or to go around. 777-300, for example, is approach category D, but this one is C. So what you always want to do, of course, we've programmed in the whole ILS. It's already in there. It's going to be tuned by the aircraft itself. But we have a point, this decision altitude, at which we're going to decide whether to continue the landing or not, especially in low visibility conditions. Usually it's around 200 feet above ground level. That's like the standard minima for a typical ILS. But you look here on the chart, well, here it has some different sections, with specific missed approach climb gradients. We're a heavy jet aircraft, we can easily make those approach climb gradients or missed approach climb gradients in the case of a go-around. But this is all, of course, to make sure that you are able to clear obstacles that might be in your way. So we basically need an altitude where we can safely decide, okay, go around. And the heavier your aircraft is, the faster your aircraft goes, the more tendency it, of course, has to have a bit of an overshoot. So you will usually see the aircraft that are flying faster will have a bit higher decision altitude to compensate for things like that. Won't go too much technical details, but you basically want to pick the decision altitude. Let's see, we have in contact me 13336. Let's just tune that really quick and then I'll continue. And this is Ryan Radar. Good. Ryan Radar, guten Abend, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, flight level 380.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, Ryan Radar, identified hello, descent to flight level 320.
Descent to flight level 320, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Alright, we already got a descent as you heard, so we're going to select flight level 320, and what I'm going to do is hit the altitude knob itself, and it will change the thrust VNAV speed, as you can see, and this will let the VNAV system already start the descent a little bit beforehand. Could be due to an airspace restriction, not sure, or maybe they just want to get us down in time. But anyway, we want to set those minimums, and we do that right here. So we're going to set the baro to 504 because we are category C aircraft.
Off into 6 keeping my airspace, monitor UNICOM, goodbye.
There we go.
UNICOM, zero, off into 6.
I might just increase the descent speed a little bit later on. Let's see. We have a cruise descent, as you can see.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, contact München radar 133.230, goodbye.
133.230, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, bye bye. Okay, as you see, it suddenly gets busy. 133.230. Just increase the approach speed here a little bit because, or cruise descent speed, because it don't have to fly that slowly. 133.230. There we go. So the minimums are set, and we're also going to set the auto brake. That's the thing. So program your FMS, tune the ILS, do some performance calculations, get an ATIS, set the minimums, set the approach speed and flap setting, and set the auto brake. Those are the things you want to think about. Okay. So we'll just log in with this controller, and then we'll slowly start to do a little bit of approach briefing. We've already reviewed most of it, but it's good to make ourselves aware of it. Munich radar, guten Abend, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, passing flight level 365 for flight level 320.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, München radar, service identified.
Good. Okay. So yeah, like I said, it's a couple of A's. You have like the ATIS, the auto brake setting, the approach speeds, later also the approach checklist, things like that. So you can use these little reminders to help yourself get set up for the approach. But if this is the picture that you have in your PFD, baro minimums, flap setting, auto brake here, and everything is programmed here properly, then you should be good to go. Okay, so let's do a bit of an approach briefing. Like with the departure briefing, it's just a nice way to make yourself aware of what you're going to be doing So to kind of brief yourself what happens, especially in the case of a go around. That's of course one of the most important things regarding a landing. Yeah, you always have to kind of consider that you're not going to land at all. So what I'm going to be doing today, the aircraft is fine, 777 freighter, weather is fine, no issue, just a little bit of crosswind upon landing, but otherwise no issues. We're going to be flying the Kerox 5 Delta arrival. All the waypoints are checked, and we basically left the vector in, and we're just going to follow the ATC instruction and to the profile as much as possible as calculated by the flight management system. We're going to have the left vector in, so around Delta Foxtrot 444 we expect further instructions, probably 2 left turns to intercept ILS runway 07 left. The altitude where this ILS starts is at 5,000 feet, as you can see, with an inbound approach course of 066. So let's see, always try to make sure you know identify what the code is of the ILS. So that's where what you can see in this section is India Foxtrot Echo Lima, which is also going to show up here on the PFD if we have tuned the correct one. So yeah, if that's what we see, then it's correct. 110.3 is the frequency. 066 degree inbound course. So we start at 5,000 feet, which is 13.8 DME from India Foxtrot Echo Lima. Continue all the way to the minimums for our aircraft, 504 feet. And then, you know, it's very good to brief the 2 scenarios. In case of landing, what we're going to do, well, as you can see on the chart, we can vacate around Papa 8, Papa 6, let's see. And then we'll just vacate to Papa. We'll get a handoff, and knowing Frankfurt, and we're approaching our altitude in the meantime, as you can see, flight level 320. Knowing Frankfurt, you know, we are taxiing to Papa, and we have to hold short at some point, somewhere around there.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, proceed direct Kerox.
Direct Kerox, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. And that's perfect, so we can skip a lot of waypoints here. There we go. We can do that with a beam points. I'll just show you a little quickly, which is definitely useful for long haul flights. As you can see, it kind of creates fake waypoints where you would be a beam the waypoint or next to the waypoint according to your original flight plan. And this kind of helps you to keep track of your fuel figures and time figures as you are passing by these waypoints. Right now it doesn't really matter, but it's nice to keep an overview of that, right?
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, descent flight level 200.
Descent flight level 200, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Okay, we gotta descend even more. This sometimes happens, guys, you know, busy airspace, they get you down quicker. Anyway, where were we in the briefing? Trust VNAV speed in the meantime. It gets busy, you know, this is what I'm warning for, but it's nice. Papa, then we taxi probably 2 right turns somewhere around there. We'll park probably on the November platform near the Lufthansa Cargo Center. In case of a go around, what are we going to do then? We're going to climb direct to Delta Foxtrot 363, then turn left direct to 362 at a maximum speed of 210 knots. Just cross-checking that in the background again, just make sure that restrictions are in there. Actually, they're not, so you could enter a restriction in here. Something like this. And 473 has 220 knots. Okay. To Tango Alpha uniform. At max 250 knots, climbing to 5,000 feet. Okay, so that's very important. So we basically, in the case of a go around, follow the LNAV profile, maintain the speed restrictions, so be a bit careful with cleaning up the flaps, and then we're going to climb to 5,000 feet to Tango Alpha uniform. Okay, so that's the go around procedure. Good overview. What else? We have a bit of terrain. also because of the city, quite some high obstacles, as you can see. MSA around the airport is 4,300 feet. Yeah, otherwise it's good to go. So again, just a bit of a briefing for yourself, what to do for landing and for go around. So we have built the mental picture in our mind. Okay, what are we going to do? And during the landing we'll of course be focused on that potential go around. When we land it's fine, but when we go around we need to be aware of this. Okay, so that completes the approach briefing. So what we can do now is also do the descent checklist. We'll do a little recall to check if any ICAS messages are still there or pop up. That's not the case, so we can do the descent checklist. The recall is checked, notes, if you did any non-normal checklist, notes associated with that checklist would pop up here behind the speed brake, but we don't have them. Auto brake is going to be 2, a landing data, a VREF flaps 30, a 137, and a barrel minimum is set at 504.
8147, speed 300 knots or greater.
Speed 300 knots or greater, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. We're already doing that, as you can see right here. So, as you can see, ATC is already playing around with us, right? They're already giving restrictions, early descents. So, another reason to bring extra fuel, guys, because if they get you down low early, you're going to be flying a lot less efficient. But who knows? We get an early turn in. Let's see. Anyway, we have set the VREF, we set the minimums. Also,
Cargo 8147, proceed direct Delta Foxtrot 437.
Direct to Delta Foxtrot 437, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Delta Foxtrot 437. There we go. Execute. This I'm gonna check on the chart where that is. 437, that's that one. Okay, perfect. So getting quite a bit direct routing here, and approach briefing is completed. The descent checklist completed. Okay, so everything is set up for the descent. Now we can.
Cargo 8147, contact Langen 127.725. Ciao.
127.725, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Tschüss.
Whiskey Papa Yankee, contact Langen 127.725.
Okay, switching frequencies, busy. There we go. Aircraft is diving in the meantime. I'm just going to reduce a little bit here. You can always use more manual modes of descent. Especially with busy airspaces, with traffic flows. You want to limit your descent as you are approaching your target altitudes. So we'll just do it like this for now. Okay, let's sign in with the controller. Lange radar, guten Abend, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, descending to flight level 200, passing 230.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, good evening, identified cleared Kirax 5 Delta, arrival, maintain 280 knots or greater.
Cleared Kirax 5 Delta arrival and 280 knots or greater, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Okay, so we're cleared for the arrival, but we got them direct, so then the rest of the arrival that we are going to fly. So ATC always needs to clear you for these kind of arrivals, right? You cannot just fly them in most cases. And also later on for the ILS approach, we cannot intercept the ILS without a clearance, okay? So, yeah. As you can see, ATC guides us nicely here. Let's enjoy some of the views. It's been very busy the last few minutes, but it's nice to appreciate the views a little bit. Beautiful. Not bad, not bad. Okay, so we're approaching flight level 200. Just gonna limit the speed a little bit here. This is a bit excessive. There we go. Leveling off. As soon as you switch to one of these manual modes, of course, be a bit aware of. I can actually do it using this one. Your speeds and the management of that. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm also going to keep a good eye on the controller list, see which tower we get and the frequencies that we can expect. because it's going to be a lot of switching of frequencies, guys, also on the ground, so be aware of that. We have alt, so we're capturing the altitude there. Switch back to VNAV.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, descend to flight level 130.
Descend to flight level 130, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. 130, there we go, hit the altitude knob again, start the descent. I'm just gonna activate the descent here. It's a little bit better. And we're going to be flying with a bit higher speed here as requested by ATC. There we go.
Good evening, identified.
So another reason that of course ATC has already allowed us to descend is because of a lot of direct. So as you can see, we're ending up quite high on profile right now, so keep an eye out on that. Once the route gets shorter, yeah, you really want to keep an eye on that you're able to keep up. On big aircraft like this, and especially like the 787, don't be afraid to use the speed brakes, guys. Right now we're catching up quite nicely with the calculated profile, as you can see, but sometimes you really just need the speed brake to slow down. So give that some consideration, and do mind that also at 10,000 feet we have to reduce to 250 knots. I think I read somewhere in the airport briefing that it's not really necessary within Frankfurt airspace, but most airlines want you to fly that slow speed of 250 knots below 10,000 feet. So keep that in mind. While we're busy, you know, if you're flying a passenger airplane, of course the cabin will be very busy right now with preparing the cabin, getting everything ready. Usually there's some call for the cabin crew to prepare for landing, for example. And at 10,000 feet we turn on the landing lights. It doesn't hurt, especially in busy situations, to do all of this a little bit earlier, okay? So I'm just going to turn on the landing lights right now, turn on the seat belts, there we go. I would give the call, but we're flying a freighter airplane, so that won't be a problem. But just to get things ready beforehand. You don't not have to wait specifically for that 10,000 feet to do those items. So 10,000 feet, seat belts on, landing lights on. In this case we're doing it a little bit earlier. And in a few moments we're also going to reduce to 250 knots. Now, there's always a bit of interplay, you know, to what degree are you following the calculated path and are following the automatic modes of LNAV and VNAV, or to what degree are you going to use more manual modes. You know, just now we used vertical speed to not descend too fast. As you can see, we're catching up very well with the profile right here, so it's no problem. But you know, especially when you get vectors, at some point it makes more sense to switch to more manual modes of descending. Like flight level change, you know, flight level changes will allow you to descend at a specific speed that you set in the speed window.
8147, connect Frankfurt arrival, 120.805, choose.
120.805, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, choose. 120.805. So let's see what this controller says. Maybe they will give us more vectors, and then we can... Frankfurt arrival, good enough, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, leveling off flight level 130.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, guten Abend, identified. Proceed direct Delta Foxtrot 441, expect ILS Yankee 07 left.
Direct Delta Foxtrot 441 for the ILS Yankee, runway 07 left, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Okay, that's okay. Delta Foxtrot 441, as you can see, and even another shortcut. So let's see. So with speed you always want to be a bit careful. One of the last instructions of the controller was to maintain 280 knots or greater. But at some point we want to reduce, so that doesn't hurt to ask the controller, you know, hey, can we reduce speed? We are still doing 280, even though, you know, in their briefing they said they can fly faster than that. But it doesn't hurt to you know, ask questions about that when needed. Okay, so let's see. So yeah, we're a little bit in the hands of the controller. This is one of those situations where, you know, we're getting a lot of early descents. we're getting direct. It's not really certain how the flight path will go. I'm not sure how busy it is at the other side of the airfield. I could take a quick look, of course, on the VATSIM radar. Doesn't look too busy, so it might be that we get some more direct. So in this case, the controller is way more active with guiding you in the descent, okay? If you're flying alone into an airport and you're just following the profile, that's perfect. You know, if we would fly into Frankfurt alone right now, we just keep the whole route in there and we do a perfect descent using the VNAV system. But in these kind of cases, you know, ATC gives a lot of, you know, step descents, speed restrictions. At that point, you know, we can kind of let go of what the automation has calculated for us. We're just going to switch to more manual modes, like level change I just talked about. So let's see. We've got an airplane over here. It's always good to kind of visually identify outside if we can see them. Might be a star, might be an aircraft. Looks like it's behind the clouds at the moment, but it's still quite far away. But yeah, there are many reasons for ATC to give you these restrictions, so you do not always have to question them, of course. But let's see. It should be alright. Tower is going to be 1365. Let's see if that frequency is also online. Again, just having those frequencies in my mind kind of helps to get ready. I think it's going to be the West Tower 124855 on VPilot. So let's see. Anyway, we've done the descent checklist. Next checklist to go is the approach checklist as we switch to the local QNH at the transition level, which is flight level 60 today. So let's see, a slow arrival into Frankfurt. And again, it doesn't hurt to fly a slow arrival right now. Of course I could beef up the speed, but I'm also explaining a lot, so I just want to take it a little bit easy. And if you're flying into big airports like this, you might want to do that too, alright? But let's see. I think we'll probably get a further descent quite soon, and then we'll know more. Alright, it doesn't hurt to, in the meantime, get one more ATIS in as we're getting closer. You know, usually at approach frequencies or arrival frequencies, you want to mention what information you just received. VATSIM. Just to get one more update, because it's been quite a while since we last requested an ATIS, so let's see. Alright, as we are waiting for the ATIS, just one thing I want to mention, you know, regarding runways and vacating. Always make sure you vacate the runway swiftly. Of course not too quick that you lose control of your airplane, but you want to make sure that you vacate swiftly. Another thing that I kind of forget to mention in the briefing.
Cargo 8174, reduce caution descent flight for 100.
Was it for 8147?
8147, apologies. Descent flight over 100.
Yeah, no worries. Descent flight level 100, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Alright, there we go.
November 234,
flight level 100.
hello, identified, expect 079. Continue present heading, descent flight level 7.
And trust VNAV speeds. There we have the ATIS, so we can take a quick look if anything has changed. Information Golf, 07 left. Wind 050 at 11 still. QNH 1023, looking good. Okay, perfect. So I'm just gonna switch to level change right now. So a bit more manual. Doesn't really make sense to use VNAV anymore right now because ATC is just factoring us. One thing I wanted to mention regarding the approach briefing is that we have a bit steeper glide slope angle, as you can see for this approach, 3.2 degrees. So our whole perspective and the speeds are going to be a little bit different, and of course our flare is also going to be a bit different. So that's something to keep in mind.
8147 descent for caution 5000 feet, QNH 1023.
Descent 5,000 feet, QNH 1023, and can we reduce for Lufthansa Cargo 8147?
8147, of course, speed 250 or greater.
Or just speed 250 or greater, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Okay, 5,000 feet, there we go. And as you can see, the controller gave us the QNH, and this is very important because we're now descending to an altitude using the local altimeter setting. So what we can do now, since we are already descending to that altitude, I do not really expect another level off. As you can see, the aircraft is now reducing first speed in level change mode to 250 knots before we continue our descent, which is okay. Yeah, we're gonna switch to the local QNH here, 1023, and also on this one. And then we can do the approach checklist altimeters. 1023, yeah, 1 to 3 times, showing 11600 on 3 sides. So that's all correct. Approach checklist completed. Alright, so these checklists, you know, come at certain points. At some point you kind of get to know when to do them. Approach checklist you can do, you know, once you are passing the transition level, or, you know, descending to an altitude below the transition level. And the landing checklist, of course, we'll do when we have the flaps down and the gear down in full landing configuration. Okay. Okay, so we're descending now 250 knots. So we're making that restriction to be below 250 knots, below flight level 100, and we'll just happily descend. So yeah, as you can see, we're a little bit below the profile right here, but that's okay. I do expect an earlier turn in by ATC, so let's take a look at that.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, stop your descent, flight level 60, speed 220 knots.
Stop descent, flight level 60, speed 220 knots, Lufthansa Cargo 8147.
Yeah, we just got to go around right in front of you.
Roger. So that's an interesting one. So we do get a level off, so it's very important to be wary. You know, yes, you can of course change to the local QNH already, but we are ordered to stop our descent at flight level 60. So, and we are ordered to reduce our speed.
Lufthansa Cargo 814, Christian 8147, contact arrival 127.280, goodbye.
127.280, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, bye bye.
Bye bye.
So we've switched, so I'm just switching to vertical speed right now. Apparently, as you may have heard, there was a go-around somewhere, so we need to level it off a little bit, but we also need to reduce our speed to 220. So I'm just going to keep descending while slowly reducing our speed as well. So you can kind of play around with these modes, and this is very important, you know, to get that energy management a little bit at the ready, and be aware of what your aircraft is doing. You can adapt to situations like this, okay? Okay, the next controller, 127.280, we tuned it. Arrival, good evening, Lufthansa Cargo 8147 with Golf.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, arrival, hello.
Okay, so let's take a look here, because where are we exactly? We have already passed the airport. I was just too busy to even look at the airport on our left hand side right here, but it's over there, as you can see a little bit through the window. So we're gonna be coming into this runway right here. Of course, nice to get a bit of visual perspective. Looking good. Okay, so we've reached 220 knots now, so we'll just switch back to flight level change. The throttles will go to idle, and then we can continue our descent here to 6,000, or to our flight level 60. We're back on standard, and we can always do the approach checklist again if we want to, by clicking on the normal menu right here, and then just going to approach checklist one more time. Just leave that open. In the meantime, as you can see, the ILS has been identified. So we have here India Foxtrot November Echo. Is that correct? I hope it's correct. It's actually not correct. Okay, so we've leveled off at 6,000. I'm just doing a quick check of the ILS right here, because I noticed that it's not the right frequency. There's sometimes a mismatch between what flight simulator thinks it needs, and what the frequency of the airport scenery is. Just a little intermezzo here as I'm fiddling around with this ILS issue in the background. This is one of those situations where there's a little bit of a mismatch between the ILS that's on the charts, the ILS that the ATC has cleared us for, and what is in the simulator, either in the scenery or in the Navigraph data. I'm not really sure. Frankfurt is one of those airports that has some runways with a special configuration where there are actually two ILSs, so actually two beams of ILSs that you can turn on or off in real life. One with the 3.20 degrees glide slope right here, the ILS Yankee, but you also have one with a regular 3 degree glide slope right here, the ILS Zulu. So I tried tuning the actual frequency of the ILS Yankee approach manually. I tried reselecting the approach in the FMS, but it simply did not catch the actual ILS that we wanted. So basically what the aircraft did in this case, even though we selected ILS Yankee, it actually tuned the frequency of the ILS Zulu approach. So apparently in the sim or in the Navigraph data there's only one ILS in there. Basically we're going to be identifying the India Foxtrot November Echo of the ILS Zulu approach. So technically we should have flown the ILS Yankee approach, but we're actually flying the ILS Zulu approach because we're using that frequency. So of course, especially in real life, this is something you want to mention to ATC. Maybe some people in the comments can let me know who fly to the virtual Frankfurt more often, if this is a scenery issue or a Navigraph data issue. I would love to know, maybe there's a fix for it, or if it's even possible to have two glide slopes with it for one runway in Microsoft Flight Simulator. But anyway, we solved it by just simply flying a little bit of a different approach. But just keep in mind that this kind of stuff can happen.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, descent 5000, QNH 1023.
Descent 5000, QNH 1023, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Thrust flight of change speeds, there we go, and now we can switch to local QNH again on 1023, and we can do the approach checklist, altimeters 1023, 123 times passing 6200. Now, perfect, approach checklist completed.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, to left heading 130.
Left heading 130, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Heading 130. There we go. Heading select. So we're being sent towards the ILS right now.
Hello, Lufthansa 8993, reduce speed 220 knots, descent 5000, QNH 1023.
So I'm just checking the ILS frequency here. Does seem to be correct. It's a new scenery, so that's always a bit challenging. Let's see, I hope this is just the correct one. Otherwise we'll have to fly on
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, turn left heading 100, cleared ILS Yankee, 7 left.
Left heading 100, cleared ILS Yankee, runway 07 left, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Alright, so yeah, it remains a bit questionable whether this is the ILS we are capturing. This is something that luckily doesn't happen in real life, but we are cleared for the ILS approach, and we're just gonna arm the approach mode. There we go. And localizer and glide slope is armed, as you can see. And we're cleared for the ILS right now. Seems to be correct. I think it's gonna be okay.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, speed 200 knots or greater.
Speed 200 knots or greater, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Flaps 1, it's going to reduce. We'll just reduce to 200, take it easy, localizer. So you want to arm the approach once you're sure that you have the correct ILS tuned and that the indications are on the correct side. In this case they weren't, or the ILS identification is wrong, but that's okay, we are surviving. We've captured the ILS localizer, as you can see, and again, air traffic control is giving quite, strict speed restrictions. So we'll just maintain it to the best of our ability. We're approaching the glide slope, And big aircraft like this might need a little bit of drag every now and then, you know, as you are descending without the landing gear yet. So let's take a look. Then tower will be next, of course. Let's see. If needed, we can also use flaps 5. Let's see, tower that I expect to be in glide slopes captured. 1 to 4.
8147, speed 190 knots.
Speed 190 knots, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Flaps 5. So I'm reducing the speed, but I always want to be above the maneuvering speed of the flap setting. So let's get the gear down and get some drag. Yeah, I think we're gonna need it. There we go. As you can see, very busy. Tower 124855. There we go. Of course, you could also use speed brakes, but you know, getting the gear down just early enough gives you that drag that you sometimes need. So there we go. But that's okay. Anyway, we're established, so that's nice. And busy airports like this, again, follow those speed restrictions. If you need to put the gear down, just put it down. You know, filling with the speed brake just is a little bit more difficult sometimes. So this is okay.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, speed 170 knots until 5 miles.
160 knots until 5 miles, Lufthansa Cargo 8147.
If you can, 170 please, till 5.
Roger, 170 till 5, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Okay, that's also doable, flaps 20, okay. There we go. So very busy, guys. Speed brakes are armed, so that's ready to go. Again, make use of your autopilot in these situations, it's just that busy. So we don't have to worry about it. 2500, let's say everything is ready, the cabin is seated. And as you can see, we're now at 7.5 miles, so soon we'll start to reduce to our final approach speed of
8147, connect Frankfurt Tower 136.5, bye bye.
136.5, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, bye. Keeping it short, of course it's the wrong frequency that I planned on. There we go, the tower. Okay. Frankfurt Tower, guten Abend. Lufthansa Cargo 8147, heavy ILS 07 left.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, Frankfurt Tower, hello, wind check, wind 040 degrees 10 knots.
Okay, just gave us a wind check, flaps 30. So what I wanted to say is we're going to reduce to our final approach speed of 143. Speed brake armed. So we're at 5 miles now, so now we really want to reduce. And there's one more thing to do, the land 3 rollout flare armed. That is to do the landing checklist. Landing checklist. Landing checklist completed. Perfect. So we have no landing clearance yet. The wind is a little bit from the right now. As you can see, this is a nice moment to kind of orientate what's happening. So the 8 set wind's gonna come from the left, so it might change, so keep that in mind. But just gonna increase the volume one more notch, and then we're gonna do some manual flying, guys. Enjoy. Okay, 1000. Not gonna miss that call, but there we go. We are stabilized.
Cargo 8147, wind 040 degrees 10 knots, runway 07 left, clear to land.
07 left, clear to land, Lufthansa Cargo 8147 heavy. Okay, disconnecting autopilot.
Lufthansa 07 Yankee.
So 1000 feet is kind of a nice point to determine if you're established and nice and stable for the approach. As you can see, the wind is shifting. So soon our decision altitude will decide whether to go around. Well, we can easily see the runway, so that's okay. 500 feet, a nice reminder for yourself to, if we're cleared, we are cleared, so we're clear to land.
Runway 18, clear for takeoff, Lufthansa 98, whiskey, thank you.
Lufthansa 7 Kilo X-ray, behind the departing company line of runway 18 behind.
Behind the departing company line of runway 18 behind.
Stable.
Lufthansa 227, taxi left via Papa, November 11,
Approaching minimums.
November.
Taxi left, Papa, hold short, taxi Papa, November 11, hold short, November.
Minimums.
Continue.
Condor 2254, November.
100.
Condor 2254, 5 tower door.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Speed back up. Reversers are normal. We'll idle reverse. There we go.
Lufthansa 98, Whiskey identified, contact land radar 136, decimal 130, choose.
I'll take the next exit.
130, Dankeschön, Arm noch, Lufthansa
Gonna zoom in on my position.
Kilo X-ray, wind 0430 knots.
And 60 knots, and we're gonna stow the reversers, or at least idle the reversers.
Lufthansa 676, behind the departing company line of runway 18.
There we go. We'll release the auto brakes, there we go. And we'll vacate here at Papa 6. Nice, that was busy, guys.
Lufthansa 227, contact apron 121, that's my 855, choose.
121, 855, Lufthansa 227, show number.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, taxi via Papa, November 11, hold short of November.
Papa, November 11, hold short November, Lufthansa Cargo 8147.
With that, 3 Papa Yankee, wind 0430 knots, runway 07 left.
Okay, there we go. Welcome to Frankfurt, guys. Let's get a taxi light on here. That was very busy. Very, very busy. We got an instruction, Papa, November, hold short at November 11 of November. So, some things to do. Get the strobe lights off. Transponder back to XPDR when we can. If you do not get to that at this stage, that's okay. A nice little acronym to remember is AliWaft. So APU, which we can start. There we go. Engine at the eyes, we don't need. The lights, so landing lights we can turn off. We can turn these off too. Let's turn the logo lights on too, by the way, to make some promotion for Lufthansa Cargo. Strobe lights gonna be off. Weather radar off. There we go. Auto brakes off. Flaps are up. And transponder. So kind of helps you, after a busy arrival to think about all that. Okay, so what do we expect next? I do expect a parking position to the right from the next controller shortly. So we'll just slowly taxi here. So as you can see, here's November 11, so we'll hold short here. We haven't received any other instruction yet, so be a bit careful here. There might be other traffic coming from the left or the right, or a car. This controller is very busy, so we'll give it some time. We'll just turn off the taxi light for a moment to indicate we're not taxiing further. Let's see if he sees us. I'm just going to give him one more minute. See if there's anyone behind us.
136, 130,
Not yet. There's always the part, do I jump in or not?
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, contact apron 121.855, choose.
11855, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, choose. Keep your transmission short, guys. It's that busy. It's necessary. Whew, quiet. Frankfurt Apron, guten Abend, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, holding short November 11.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147, contact apron on 121.755, Joe.
Okay, roger, 121.755, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, Joe. Frankfurt apron. Guten Abend, Lufthansa Cargo 8147, holding short November at November 11.
Lufthansa Cargo 8147 apron, hello. Continue taxi via November 14, stand Foxtrot 212.
Roger, November 14, stand Foxtrot 212, Lufthansa Cargo 8147. Okay, so as you can see, just 2 right turns in the corner there. The left is clear and the right is clear. Taxi lights are on again. And then we're gonna park. What a hectic approach was that, right? It was a bit annoying that the ILS navigation thing is was incorrect. The identifier, that's the word that I was looking for. But it worked. So I was kind of fiddling around with it at a busy moment, but yeah. Luckily it worked. So yeah, with these busy frequencies, it's always a bit of a question. When do I jump in? It's always good to first listen out on a frequency when you tune in, so you know, people might still be talking or an instruction was just given and a reply is still, you know, coming in. So when you tune, don't immediately talk, just give it some time, right? So we've started the APU. In practice, you would also be able to do an engine shutdown right now after 3 minutes have passed, but I'm just going to skip that. But this allows us to shut the engines down and then hook up the external power later on. We'll turn right here at November 14. Looks all clear. Just gonna add a little bit more lights. Seems a bit dark here. There we go. Let's see, we have a Marshaller probably. Foxtrot 212. And this is where we turn off the taxi lights to not blind the ground crew. Just slowly taxi in here.
Negative 118.780.
Let's see. There we go. Once they cross. Or that. Yeah. I think we went a bit too far there, but it was a bit confusing that they didn't cross. Anyway, parking brake is set. There we go. Parking brake. Let's see if it shows up. Yeah, parking brake is set. The APU is running, so we can shut off the engines. There we go, guys. Perfect. Let's get some light in here. Perfect. Turn the seatbelts off. Turn the hydraulics off. The fuel pumps off. There we go. And the transponder off. And then we can do the shutdown checklist. The shutdown checklist, a parking brake. Oh, we'll just leave it set here. Parking brake is set, shutdown checklist completed. So there you go, a full flight, a very busy arrival, especially into Frankfurt. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope, you know, all the explanations have kind of helped. I'm just gonna go off the frequency here. Normally you would maybe sign off, but in this case, yeah, of course we wanna.
Crew bus is coming.
Perfect. That's good to know, because I think we're gonna need a beer or a good whiskey at this point to enjoy a busy flight, the relaxation after a busy flight. So as you can see, very busy, but I hope through explaining as much as possible you kind of have an idea of a typical VATSIM flight. Now this is nowadays quite typical. Yeah, you know, 10 years ago VATSIM would not be this busy, but it is definitely very busy. It's getting very busy, more busy every month it seems, but it's fun. It's as long as it's all manageable, as long as ATC likes it and handles it, then it's fun. But yeah, my message would be, you know, us pilots, let's make sure we also know what we're doing. And I hope by sharing some knowledge, also some knowledge from real life, within the limits of all this, that you've been able to yeah, enjoy a little bit of how it all works, and hopefully a bit of inspiration for your own flights, so you can improve here and there, or change some things here and there if you've done things in a certain way. So thanks for watching this full flight here on the AviationPro channel. Thank you very much for joining in. Thanks for everyone who's been supporting the channel. If you want to join the AviationPro channel memberships, I do extra monthly live full flights for members only, so you can learn even more about flying. Make sure you join the memberships. There are different tiers available that you can join. Would very much appreciate your support in that. Other than that, thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a great time on VATSIM, and for now I will say good night and cheers from Frankfurt Airport.